All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Newberg City Council, March 17th. I call this meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Certainly. Counselor McBride,
Here.
Counselor Wheatley. Here. Counselor Yarnell Holloman. Here. There we go. Counselor Kilbrick. Here. Mayor Rosacker.
Here.
Counselor Turgeson. Here. And Counselor Carmen is absent.
Would everybody please stand and join in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So the first item on our agenda, if you've looked at the agenda, is an executive meeting. So the executive meeting is a private meeting, and we will be leaving for about probably 30 minutes, and then we will readjourn to this meeting. So here's the required announcement. The Newberg City Council will now meet an executive session pursuant to Oregon Revised Statute 192.6602E, which allows the council to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions. Representative of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on or otherwise disclose any of the deliberations or anything said about these subjects during the executive session, except to state the general nature of the subject as previously announced. So right now we're going to adjourn to the executive session. We'll see you folks in a few minutes. So we're going to come back to open session as soon as we're. While we wait for the attorney and some others to come back, we have 8 people signed up for comment today. So we're going to limit your time to 4 minutes instead of the customary 5. So give you a few minutes to try to rewrite your speeches. Yes, sir.
Since the statistics report is fairly pro forma, nothing particularly of significance, I think perhaps we could consider waiving that portion if you would like to save some time.
Thank you. I think that is appropriate. So these general or these? So at this point, this is our public comments period. We have one general comment, and that is from, I believe it's Keith Leonard. All right. Welcome. Thanks for your patience.
I've been to 2 or 3 of these meetings before. So I have a public safety concern. In your development code, and thank you for letting me speak tonight, in your development code, you restrict anything over 3 feet within the corner clearance or the vision clearance area. Could be a tree, could be a fence, could be a hedge. But what isn't restricted are vehicles parking right up to the corner. So it's very hard to see around these cars. I live over by Friends Park, and I don't think you could get a fire apparatus to turn one of those corners if cars are parked right up to the corner. So I don't know if there's something that can be done where the municipal code can meet the development code, but it would be wonderful. And I think it is a public safety issue when you can't see around a vehicle and you're trying to turn. So that's it.
Chief, we do have ordinances keeping people from parking in intersections. Is that correct?
Yes, we do, and state law.
So how close can somebody park to the intersection?
I believe it's 15 or 20 feet.
So, sir, if you see people parked within that distance, please call the non-emergency number and the police department will absolutely take care of that. You're correct. Thank you. All right. So the rest of the public comments, we're gonna save to the issue that everybody wants to talk about so that they can be more appropriate. Next is our consent calendar. We have a couple items. Would anybody like to make a motion or?
I move we approve the consent calendar. Second.
It has been approved or moved and seconded that we approve the consent calendar as written. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. All right, the motion passes. So next is our master fee schedule. Welcome.
Good evening, council and mayor. I'm gonna recap. I was here last week presenting on this, but my name is Dan Coiler. Once a year, I am in charge of putting together, making updates to, and presenting to y'all the master fee schedule updates. And I'm the accounting manager in the finance department. The master fee schedule was established in 2016, and it was with sort of an intent. Oh,
Can I interrupt you?
yes, you can.
This is an administrative hearing, is that correct?
Yes.
So I have to do a few things
Yeah, sorry
before I
about
let
that.
you
Go
do this. So I call this administrative hearing to order. At this point, declarations of conflicts of interest or abstentions from any of the council members. There are none. Next is staff reports. Thank you very much.
Sorry about that. You want me to restart? Anyhow, the master fee schedule was established in an attempt to more efficiently and effectively make updates to and present changes in fees. Many of the fees within the master fee schedule are set to CPI indexing, and some of them are subject to an annual evaluation by the department heads and the city manager to determine whether or not they whether or not it makes sense to increase them. So essentially, the master fee schedule, I sort of view as a vehicle that I drive. And so the items that get updated, I know I've made changes to based on collaboration with the departments. So technical questions on them, I might lean towards some of the department heads that came up with it. There's a highlight in the request for council action, a highlight of fee changes that kind of summarizes the major changes. The city attorney research rate within the public records request charges was increased from $300 per hour to $404 per hour. It was changed, it was increased to more accurately reflect the legal charges based on what we pay for the junior partner hours, which is usually who does this public records request redactions and evaluations. But I want to point out that not all public records requests require legal review. A lot of the simple ones are done without needing to go through the legal team. There's a new fee being added to the master fee schedule to represent a new opportunity. It's based on a new position that was recently created called the Digital Archivist and Grant Writer. And essentially that fee enables or gives the public an opportunity to utilize and receive professional assistance for application writing and editing, identification of grantors, creation of project one-pagers, navigation of federal grant reporting requirements, and other services and knowledge. The rate set is $50 per hour, which is based on the loaded rate for that individual employee. And by loaded rate, that includes their salary and benefits. For the finance department section, you'll see increases from the last one just based on the January increases in water rates and sewer rates and stormwater, and those all are passed through a different process than this. I just wanted to note that they're updated from the last master fee schedule. But those all happen through the Citizens Rate Review Committee. The library has a small change to one of their fees. Basically, the Library Advisory Board approved a change to the interlibrary loan policy to basically to change it to charge $5 per loan, interlibrary loan, beyond the first 12, which are free. And these loans are an opportunity for someone to request a book that's not within our system or our greater OSCC RLS. I can't think of the regional library service that we utilize. So if it's outside of all of that, they can still get the book by shipping it from a different service. And this charge is based on estimated costs for what it costs to mail those. The permit center has a lot of increases based on the fees that are indexed, which is mostly building planning. And those are subject to CPI based on their individual ordinances, resolutions, and orders that set them up originally. The CPIU of December is what was used for the CPIU increase, which was 2.9%. And then there's one fee, the fee in lieu of parking, which to date hasn't been used. It's just there in case it's needed. But that one is actually updated using the Engineering News Record Construction Cost Index for Seattle, which is the closest region for that particular type of rate. And that one is 4.5% for December 2024. The demolition permit fee was previously removed from the building permit section of the master fee schedule, as that department determined that it did not pertain to the building code division, and so not within their scope of work. However, after we removed it, the engineering department realized that it was still a necessary and useful fee for the sake of tracking and reporting requirements. So essentially, I'm putting it back in, but under the engineering section, and it's being set at the base inspection permit rate of $108.22. The business license and permit fees were reorganized a little bit, just for clarification. But there's no major changes besides adding the temporary merchant business license fee, which is in the code but was never observed. And so it's basically just adding it in where it should have always been in there. There's no changes in police fees or public works fees. So there is one thing I wanted to highlight. As compared to what was in last council meeting's packet, there was one change, and that is page 24. In which case the valuation table for the International Code Council, that didn't get released until the day of the last meeting. So the numbers in that previous presentation on that page were still, were sort of last year's numbers waiting to get until I got the new ones. And so the new ones are now in there. They don't change much. And then since the last council meeting, I had a couple of small adjustments. My building department reached out to me and noted that they noticed a couple things that they wanted to get fixed. And I might lean on James a bit about whether or not it warrants an amendment or just a typo. Scribner's there. I'm not sure how it works. But on page 9, within the building mechanical fees, there's a furnace rate for gravity furnaces above 100,000 BTUs, and then the air handler fees, which for the commercial estimated values, I had $2,329.66. I had a $1 typo in my calculation, which including the 2.9% increase I need to fix that to say $2,330.69, which is, for each of those three fees is a change of $1.03 more. And then, she also had requested that, it- just for the sake of, making it easier to, or more clear, on page 8, which has gotten away from me, but on page 8, there is a, reinspection fee. Yeah, the reinspection fee of $108.22. They were hoping that, that we could add the words after that / reinstatement fee. Just to make it more clear, because they've always been, that's always been the reinstatement fee, but it didn't have its own line in this report, so they wanted me to add it, but they've essentially, it's been piggybacking off of the reinspection fee. And so that's just a matter of clarification. So I don't know if we need to officially, if I'm officially proposing to amend it in that way.
Thanks, Dan. These fees are adjustments to the current materials in the council packet, correct? Not adjustments from the last
Correct.
work session.
It's different than what's in the publicly published version of, most current version of this.
Okay. Yeah, council can still adopt it as amended in your comments, so long as they do that, by the appropriate motions and vote. And then, of course, as a reminder, the mayor will open up this hearing for public comment, so we'll want to make sure to do that to allow the ability to comment, especially with respect to those changes.
So I need to do that before the public comment?
Well, you've described the adjustments here just
Okay.
now to the schedule, so that's sufficient as far as
Okay.
providing it through the staff report, and then council can choose to adopt it as you've adjusted it, should they choose to do so after taking public comment.
Appreciate it. I'm outside my normal territory here. So I guess the staff proposal would be to adopt resolution 2025-3961 with the minor stated amendments of correcting those fees and adding the clarifying verbiage.
All right, you get to go sit down for a minute. We have one public comment. So I'm gonna open public testimony. And Rebecca Wallace. Welcome.
Good evening, council members, mayor. I appreciate the opportunity to speak today regarding the updated master fee schedule and recent changes to the city's website, both of which impact public access to information. Rebecca Wallace, Newberg. Sorry, I forgot to lead with that. While I understand the need for cost recovery in city operations, I encourage the council to consider how these changes affect transparency, public engagement, and alignment with the city's long-term goals. The public records fees, a comparison with nearby jurisdictions. The updated master fee schedule includes a $60 per hour charge for general records research, in addition to a $404 per hour charge for attorney review, which used to be $300. The proposed is $404. These rates are significantly higher than what is charged in neighboring jurisdictions. McMinnville, the administrative staff time is $32 per hour. Their attorney research time is $100 per hour compared to Newberg's $404 and $60. Yamhill County administrative staff time is $32 per hour, $65 per hour for supervisory, and attorney research time is $100. I do a lot of public records requests and I pay those fees when they are required to be paid. I've paid it here at the city. I've paid up to $900, almost $1,000 for a public records fee here. That's really cost prohibitive, but For legal review, Newberg's $404 per hour fee is more than 4 times what both McMinnville and Yamhill County charge. Even for basic record searches, residents in Newberg are expected to pay almost double what McMinnville and Yamhill County charge for administrative staff time. This pricing structure raises concerns about accessibility. If a resident or business owner needs a request public records in Newberg, they face a far greater financial barrier than in neighboring communities. High fees, even with a reduction policy, can discourage the public from engaging with their government, limiting transparency and accountability. How this aligns with council goals, council goal number 4 states the importance of creating and maintaining a high level of transparency with our residents in order to build trust. However, transparency is the only meaningful if access to information is realistic and affordable. If residents and local organizations cannot afford to request public records, it creates a paywall to public information, which works against this goal. Additionally, Council Goal 5 calls for implementing a careful and prudent fiscal policy. While cost recovery is necessary, transparency should not become a revenue-generating function. By evaluating fees in relation to comparable jurisdictions, Newberg can balance financial responsibility with public access, ensuring records remain available without unnecessary cost burdens. Challenges with the website transparency. In addition to cost concerns, the city's recent website changes have made it a little bit more difficult to locate public records. The web drawer system, while a wonderful tool, requires users to navigate data sets using specific keywords and filters, making it significantly less intuitive than the previous format. For example, a recent search for council discussions on the Butler property failed to return expected results despite those discussions having taken place. This suggests that either records are not properly indexed or the system is not user-friendly enough for the general public. Council Goal number 4 emphasizes expanding communication outreach and ensuring residents can engage with the city. A more accessible website with properly categorized, indexed, and searchable documents would significantly enhance transparency and reduce the need for a costly records request. Again, no shade to the new website, it's great, but that particular web drawer is really cumbersome and you do have to be really kind of a data person to know what data sets to put into the web drawer to get what you need. It's really, really clunky, which would cause someone to have to reach out to the public records person to say, I can't find this and I have put in literally everything I could try to find to get it. You just can't get it. And that would cost more staff time. The old website was fabulous for that. But anyway, encouraging solutions for greater transparency. Rather than focusing solely on the challenges, I encourage the council to consider proactive solutions that align with its own goals for transparency and fiscal responsibility. Reevaluate the public records fee structure to bring it in line with similar jurisdictions like McMinnville and Yamhill County. Improve the organization of digital records to make them more intuitive and searchable, reducing the need for formal requests. Ensure that attorney review fees are applied only when legally necessary, and consider setting a more reasonable rate for that legal research. Ensure fee reduction policies are clearly communicated and accessible so residents know when and how they may qualify. Explore technology solutions to streamline records management for both city staff and the public, lowering the administrative costs. Newberg has the opportunity to be a leader in transparent governance, ensuring that public records remain accessible while maintaining efficiency. I appreciate the council's attention to this matter, and I hope that there's some solutions that can be worked out to align with the city's stated goals that they have. And then just a small little blurb about the grant writer fee. Most federal grants are extremely complex. They're $50 to $150 an hour, and the $50 hour is being subsidized by the city. And what happens if a business pays for their own grant person and applies for a grant, and then another business uses the city grant person subsidized by taxpayers, and business number 2 gets the grant money? This could raise ethical issues. Most federal grants for local folks are in the form of small business grants and ag grants. It would be more appropriate for the chamber to offer its members a grant writing service, or for some association to help with that, not the local taxpayers. Thank you for your time and
Wrap it up.
consideration.
Thank you. Come on back up, Dan. So I am going to close public testimony. And recommendations from staff you already gave. You did that very well. So it's time for council deliberation. How do we feel? Please?
I agree with Ms. Wallace on that comment. And I actually would like to consider pausing the increase of public records fees and moving forward with the rest of the master fee schedule to convene, as she proposed, a really thoughtful options of how we could move forward to consider that. So that's what I would like to see, and I strongly agree with her.
There are a couple of key elements which we must consider if we're going to not increase the fee basis in line with our actual costs. The first thing to consider is, of course, that all cities are different. Some cities have in-house counsel, which may have a lower cost burden, but may be less effective than our excellent counsel. There is also the case that very, very infrequently does anyone who applies for a public records request actually get charged a penny, because most public records requests occur with extreme dispatch, and nobody has higher ethics than Rachel Thomas in terms of not charging somebody if the work only takes 20 minutes, half an hour. And so many of the charges that you see simply are not ever levied. Also, and thirdly, the website, which is new, is new. And so there is much work to be done on some sections of the website, but we got the website up in a year, unlike our competitors, for whom they're still trying after 3 or 4 years. So I would caution against asking the city to lose money with individual transactions when we know what the cost basis is as presented in the master fee schedule.
Can I follow?
Would you? Yes, I'd like you to be a little more descriptive and as to which,
That's what I was gonna do.
okay, thank you.
So my comment is based off of, I think that that's very fair and reasonable, and I'm not addressing the website at all. I'm strictly addressing what I know to be true of Rachel, that she is efficient and is not charging citizens for, I would guess, under 30 minutes of time. But if that is the case, then we as the government, in my perspective, philosophically, it is our obligation or responsibility to provide that information as often and as reasonably cost as we can. And if it really is a, one-off type of example that you're describing, then I feel even more strongly that it should be accessible financially to someone that makes $60,000 or someone that has an LLC, 10 LLCs and they do this for fun. So, I support Ms. Wallace's recommendation that we try to have our public records request process be as financially accessible to all income brackets, that's not the barrier to receiving information that we are trying to state is theirs, not ours. So.
When I heard the numbers that Becky quoted from Minville, and I can't remember the other entity, I was shocked at how low they are, because when we look at an employee's time, we're not just looking at an hourly pay rate, we're looking at comp and benefits, what it costs to have that person in the job. So I think what we're asking is reasonable based on the fact that it's what it's costing the city. Same thing with the occasional review by legal. It's what it will cost the city to have them do that, so we could recoup. So I think I would approve this.
Well, I feel the same way. I mean, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, it was brought up at that time that it's rarely do we have counsel take a look at something. Obviously, if we have counsel take a look at something, it's going to cost more because it's of a higher matter of importance. And so you're going to pay for that. And so, I'm fine with this. I'll approve it.
I guess I'm going to trust staff. They know what it costs, how much time it takes. Rachel has discretion, so it does seem more expensive than some other cities, but there must be a reason for that, as Will said. So I will vote to approve the fee schedule.
I guess I'm curious, what does rarely mean? Like, is it 2% of public records requests that have a like, What is rare?
Yeah, I was just corresponding with the city manager about maybe it would be helpful to council if I talk a little bit about legal scope in the context of these public records requests. So, the overwhelming majority of public records requests, never even reach legal's desk. I would have to go back and look at the specific number over the last year, but I would be surprised if we've seen over the last 12 months, 5 requests. Probably less than that. I'd actually take the under on that. But there are a couple of, when matters do come across my desk, there are a couple of different ways that it looks. The first is that there could be a particular record or material that does not have to be disclosed under the public records law. And my office will conduct the redactions to confirm accuracy of what the information or what records are being entirely or partially redacted. That is the scope that is billed through at that increased rate. The other type of ask is that is a particular record even exempt from the public records law, right? Which can get pretty complex, especially if you're dealing with the potential for appeals to the DA or to the circuit court. Those are costs that we cannot bill and do not bill through to the requester. Those are the types of items that the city is already taking on or absorbing that cost. So we're really talking about that kind of former scope. And as I shared, I would be shocked if there have been 5 such requests or even 3, quite frankly. Yeah, 3 all of last year, so.
I would like to know specifically which fees you're talking about, just agreeing with her that didn't give me enough. Are you just talking about a couple of fees or are you talking about the whole thing?
The public records request fees. And just that's it. And I want to clarify that I agree with everything that has been said of costs of staff time and all of that, and that we have to, adjust to the market. But this for me is actually a philosophical decision of how accessible we want public information to be to taxpayers. And so I would probably even go a step further and say that I would want lower costs for citizens to be able to access public records. That's not where I want to pay for our staff time. I agree with Will that we have to pay for it somewhere, but it shouldn't be on the backs of the public accessing information that is theirs rightfully.
I'm ready to make a motion. I move we adopt resolution 2025-3961, adopting the master fee schedule as presented by Dan tonight with corrections and clarifications.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? This is your chance to amend if you wish to.
Okay, I'll move to amend to table the increase of the public records fee. So to keep it as previously written.
Just to be clear, you're talking about changing one fee from the new fee of $404 back to $300. Is that correct?
That's the legal.
That's the legal review. Is that what we're talking about specifically? Or am I wrong?
All of the public records request fees to be paused at the current rate.
So your motion is to keep all public record request fees at the 2024 year rate.
Well stated.
Is there a second?
I'll second that from an access standpoint.
Okay, so now we're gonna talk about the amendment. We're voting on the amendment alone to change the new request to leave the fees for public record request at the 2024 year level. Is there any discussion? That being the case, all in favor of leaving the public records request fees at the 2024 level, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay?
Nay.
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 Nay. All right, so now we have a motion on the table to approve the public record request as it's written. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor of approving this measure, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
That ends the administrative hearing. We're back to the regular meeting now. So the next item of new business is the policy concepts update for the vacation rental home regulations. Where's James? Oh, there he is. Welcome, sir. Hope you're having a fun time.
All right, so good evening, counselors. My name is James Dingwell, one of the assistant planners, and tonight we're going to be taking a briefer look, hopefully, with what's left on the agenda at some of the engagement and policy, an update from the kind of first step of the scope of work from last winter, and look to get some direction as we enter then the code amendment and code drafting process to go to Planning Commission and then back to you for the code amendments. So just high level, the project supports the new Council Goal 7, preserving the balance between the needs of the tourism industry and preserving the character of our town, and particularly Objective 1, implementing and codifying the new short-term rental rules within 1 year. As a reminder on the project scope for the policy update, the 3 objectives focus on growing tourism responsibly, leveraging opportunities at the city to foster growth and tourism while minimizing conflicts between the city's residents and visitors. Second, improving compliance rates by implementing operational changes and updating local regulations to improve compliance or permitting, business license registration, and transient lodging tax remittance. And finally, improving knowledge of vacation rental homes in Newberg. So at the end of 2024, the Community Development Department held a series of engagement events, which we saw some of you at. This included 2 open houses at the library, one of which focusing on vacation rental operators, a virtual open house, and an online survey. The events and survey had both an education and input sections to get attendees up to speed on the current policy and prevalence of rentals in Newberg, and then get input on the policy questions that came out of the Planning Commission and ad hoc recommendations and City Council discussions last year. Overall, we had 94 responses to our input questions, and including 24 attendees at the open houses. The open houses and surveys focused on 4 main questions: how many vacation rentals should be allowed, what the approval process for rental should be, how long permits should be valid for, and what noticing should be required by operators. And the operator forum also had discussions on TLT collection, penalties for noncompliance, tracking, reporting, and communicating complaints, and then amortization and grandfathering when the new code is adopted. I want to note that this engagement focused on the policy areas in those recommendations and council direction. And so if there are any other questions or policy areas, they can be discussed at the work sessions once code language is being drafted. So feel free to raise any tonight, and we can bring them into the next stage of the project. And so the goal then for tonight's session is to confirm that direction, highlight any of that engagement work, and move forward to the code drafting. So starting off with the number of vacation rental homes, the Planning Commission's recommendation was to consider a density-based cap, and the ad hoc committee's recommendation was to include a citywide cap of 2% of the households. Other options discussed included a hybrid approach based on zoning districts, and adjacency limit for where rentals are located, sub-area identification, or ownership limitations. Responses at the engagement events strongly supported changing the status quo of no limitation, and over half supported the citywide cap, and just under half were both in favor of considering density or district approaches. So I kind of, how we are looking for these sides to go is kind of after these 10,000 foot summaries, if there's any comments or questions, and kind of coming to some sort of kind of confirmation direction, either of one of the recommendations to move forward into code language, or any other notes that we should work on with the planning commission. So we'll kind of pause here at this first question, look at the highlighted colors are the planning commission and ad hoc, and then any questions about the engagement results as well.
Could you go to the next screen, please?
Yes.
Now, the district-based cap, what is,
So that could be either saying in the downtown, there's a cap here versus downtown, or saying that in R1's kind of versus R2, so that there's kind of a couple options where it's kind of identifying a certain area and having that cap be distinct from the city overall.
back to the first one. So council, how do we feel about that? The green is what the ad hoc committee come up with. The blue is what the planning commission recommended. Where do we stand? Mike?
Well, I like the idea of having, a cap like at 2%. And, I think by doing that, we can keep an eye on it. We can maybe have yearly or every other year review just to see where we at. And, so I think that's a good compromise.
All right, I have been remiss here. We have some public comments. Let's, Megan Carta. Megan, are you speaking on this? No, sorry. We have Robert Soppy somewhere here. Hi, Robert. Come on up.
Good evening. My name's Robert Suppy and I'm a local resident. I'd like to start with the idea of property rights. While I'm a supporter of the rights of property owners, I think it's important to recognize that the use of a property as a short-term rental is not a built-in property right in Newberg. That should be especially clear simply from the designations of special use, conditional use. When someone purchases a residential property, unless a conditional use permit was previously issued for the property, there's no guarantee that it may be approved to be used as a short-term rental. Purchasers should be well aware of this when they purchase property. Next item, surveys. In your packet are the results of surveys that staff conducted. I think it's important to understand the limits of the results based on simple statistics. To start with, the respondents were not randomly selected. This could easily push a bias in any particular direction in an unpredictable manner. Secondly, given the sample size and the actual population, the margin of error is around plus or minus 10% in the results. I suggest keeping this in mind when looking at the survey results. Some of the questions have to do with, process. Some of the questions have to do with whether the approval should be through a conditional use process, as it generally is now, or as a special use. Special use process significantly hides the process from the public. While the public is allowed to provide written testimony, there's no clarity at all if the testimony was considered, and there is no visibility of the decision process, and the decision is made by a single person. Yes, the decision can be appealed, but that is a great expense for those other than the applicant. I think choosing to make the process a special use would be in direct conflict with the council goal of transparency. As a conditional use process, which goes through the planning commission, public input is far more likely and the decision process is very public. I think having a staff member make a decision is appropriate when the criteria are very objective. That's not the case here. There's a significant amount of subjectivity that goes into the decision. I think that citizens, such as those on the Planning Commission, are better equipped to decide matters of this sort where livability is an important criterion. Transferability. Some of the questions have to do with whether the approval should apply to the property, as it generally does now, or with the applicant. I strongly support limiting it to the applicant. It has been clear that the approvals have frequently been influenced by the vision that the applicant has for their property. While I think it's problematic to consider that vision when no requirements are made on the applicant to actually follow it, it's even more problematic if the property is sold to someone else. Caps. There are also survey questions regarding whether there should be limits on the number of short-term rentals. It's clear from the data that staff provided that there's a very high density of short-term rentals in some neighborhoods. I suspect that if you surveyed residents in those neighborhoods, you get a very different view of the significant impact they have on the neighborhood. I don't think that's a perspective that's easy to have if you don't live in the area with high density. I strongly encourage limits on the density of STRs, the TLT. There's been discussion about how to deal with those who have not been paying the TLT. I have concerns regarding what appears to be suggested for grandfathering those who are required to pay but haven't been. In particular, there doesn't appear to be consideration of requiring them to pay the amount of the past TLT that they failed to pay. I fail to see the logic in rewarding those who haven't followed the rules by giving them a pass on what fees they avoided. Lastly, parking. I'd like to comment on the requirement of only 2 off-street parking spaces. I would think that the parking requirements should track the number of allowed occupants. We've had one approval where the property was allowed to have up to 10 occupants plus unlimited numbers of visitors while still only requiring 2 off-street parking spaces. I think this puts an undue burden on the neighborhood and should be rectified. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Back to our slide. So does anybody? Yes, Peggy.
Speaking to the citywide versus density cap, and full disclosure, I was on the ad hoc committee. One of the things we've recommended, and I think that will be passed, is that we want to look at this in 1 year and see how we're doing, and then biannually thereafter. So at any point, we could amend the cap to be density based versus citywide. So for now, I think having a citywide cap is a huge step that we haven't tried yet.
So I've heard a couple of you say citywide. I agree in citywide. So let's just have a show of hands of who would like a citywide cap. All right. Ready to move on.
On the procedure, as Mr. Sabi mentioned. So the recommendation from the ad hoc committee was to change all vacation rentals to that type 2 procedure. So that would change the criteria for R1 and R2 from being special use and conditional use, and those conditional use are what speak to the livability criteria Mr. Sabi mentioned, to only being the objective criteria in the special use standards. And I think kind of one note kind of at this level is the ad hoc committee also kind of considered looking at some of those standards and did not include that in their recommendation. So if considering the standards themselves is something that council wanted to kind of add into the code drafting process with this change, that could be something at the planning commission level beyond just the change of type. Then one other note is, one of the other recommendations from the ad hoc committee was changing that, lifespan from running with the land to running with the applicant. And that is a connection with this recommendation where currently only those conditional use permits run with the land and special use permits in R3 and commercial zones do not. So by that switch to making them all special use, that has the domino effect of changing that run with the land versus run with the applicant distinction. And in, the feedback that we did get, kind of also indicated support from the respondents of the special use permit process and of that switch from the run with the land to run with the applicant.
If I recall correctly, the planning commission was looking at each and every application for a short-term rental. And they believed that it's all pretty objective and was basically not a good use of their time to be doing that. Am I right in my recollection?
So I think typically, and it's got kind of, as well, I think the majority of applications that we've seen have been in the R1 and R2 districts, which then require the conditional use permit. There are vacation rentals are permitted in the R3 and in the C commercial zones with some limitations that it has to be an existing dwelling in those C zones, but the vast majority of them have been in residential low and medium density zones. And then I think secondarily, the conditional use permit criteria look at the impact on the livability and references things like parking or public infrastructure. And staff's interpretation has been to look at the use of a residence by people, comparing it to a long-term or owner renter. And so that's been a kind of implementation decision by staff to be consistent in how they're writing findings and doing the staff reports for the planning commission, which has resulted in, I think, many similar planning commission hearings and findings that speak to your portrayal of that. Scott, do you have anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, James. And I would just add that the criteria, and I think you'd mentioned this for conditional use permit, are subjective. And there are both objective criteria that are applied by the planning commission, and there are subjective criteria that go to neighborhood livability and impacts on the neighborhood. And I think the difficulty with that is that to try to craft a condition of approval that addresses the direct impacts of that use or that vacation rental, it's just very difficult because from rental to rental, the concerns about neighborhood compatibility are very similar. Parking, the perception of greater activity and people moving in and out and potentially causing disruption. So, and then when they're looking at these uses in areas that have a higher concentration of rentals, there's a sense that those impacts are elevated, even when the individual use may not be any more impactful than a single family home. So I think that's where the sort of the challenge of this lies. And if the subjective criteria or the compatibility criteria that would be applied in reviewing a conditional use permit were to go away, and these vacation rentals were to go through strictly through a type 2 process, I think that's where the planning commission could be helpful in sort of targeting what are those impacts that we see that are repetitive, and can we recommend standards in addition to those standards that already apply that would mitigate that, so that those standards could be applied through a more objective process and wouldn't require it to be elevated to a hearing. Although through a type 2 process, any application could be referred or appealed to the planning commission. So I think that's the balance that I think can be struck here. It's between a more prescriptive and objective process that really mitigates those impacts that are unique to vacation rentals, that would be different than those that you would see in a single family home.
So are you recommending, what specifically are you recommending? What action?
So, I think the conversations at the ad hoc committee focused on kind of the process overall and that use of the planning commission's time. And so staff's kind of recommendation would look at if this move to a type 2 procedure was chosen, kind of reviewing what those objective criteria are in the code process, kind of and striking that balance between the currently the 4 objective criteria are 2 parking spaces, trash collection, 2 occupants per bedroom, and single family. Having the conversation with the planning commission and in that public hearing process and commenters of if those 4 objective criteria are meeting those needs and if they may have to be amended in this change as well. Well, the recommendation from the ad hoc committee is that it wouldn't go from type 3 in general. And so one of the options that was discussed and then discussed in the engagement events was a limited conditional use. So that's somewhat similar to what we have now, where right now conditional uses are limited to R1 and R2. So there could be policy options where it's a conditional use if it's over the cap limit, or if it has a certain number of bedrooms, or if it's so that the threshold of what triggers the conditional use would be a different outcome than the recommendation from the ad hoc committee of the straightforward type 2, which could be appealed to the planning commission.
Yeah, I think what you're probably sensing is that there's so many different permutations and there's so many different scenarios, and really from the council, just having your direction on is this type 2 procedure or pathway that you want the planning commission to explore? They can drill down into it. They can see, what the sort of the sensitivity is. They can receive public comment. They can hear about what are the most salient concerns, whether it's parking or density or number of bedrooms or whatnot. And then they would make a recommendation to this council. So we're not looking for you to specifically solve all of those different permutations and variations on this, but really just to provide direction on the approach, and then you'll receive feedback from the planning commission.
So my feeling is that I have watched several planning commission meetings where this was on their agenda. And what it appeared was that they had a lot of people come in and give their personal reasons why they were afraid of having a short-term rental in their neighborhood. But when it came down to it, they had met the requirement. So the planning commission sits there and listens to all these people who they empathize with, but yet they have to approve it because that's what the rules said. So that was our reasoning for taking it out of the type 3. I'm in favor of that. I'm glad that we came to the recommendation of keeping it with the applicant and not with the property. I don't like grandfathered items like that. So that would be my recommendation. I see head nods. Everybody raise their hand if they agree. All right.
This item was noticing. So right now, the current policy is only when a land use application is submitted. The ad hoc committee's recommendation was for annual good neighbor notices. So every year an operator would submit their contact information, who to contact if there's a problem, et cetera. And of the responses, that was a similarly supported option. The one time upon approval also received half of the respondents' support. And so there would be some development of what this good neighbor notice looks like, but the concept being that it's more of an annual process that takes into account people moving or kind of changing dynamics around a vacation rental.
I suspect everybody agrees with that. All right, Mike, Mike, go ahead.
So I think I agree. I think that's a good idea. My only question is, who on the staff is this going to be done from the planning commission side? Or is it going to be from our internal staff that's going to be doing this? And if so, what kind of time are we looking at them putting in for something like this?
So I think in kind of initial discussions, it would likely look similar to the notices that go out for a land use decision where the applicant or the operator is the one doing it. And then at the business license renewal or other kind of more frequent touch points that could be verified by staff as opposed to staff doing the noticing themselves. All right, one item that was not in a recommendation from either planning commission or ad hoc committee, but came up in some of the discussions at the engagement and in a couple of the survey responses was looking at ownership regulations. So this touched on ownership numbers on the cap and to overall number discussion, and then possibly proximity or having some sort of agent within a certain distance. So we wanted to bring this up after it came up in those engagement sessions, even though there wasn't a recommendation given, to see if there was any comments or notes to consider ownership areas as well. If not, we can keep going.
We require this now, do we not, with the program?
No. So there's not an ownership. We require some sort of management or self-managed information with a posting, but we don't have a limitation on how many vacation rentals an operator can have or how close they have to be or et cetera to a rental.
Okay, well, in my opinion, I thought that's what the appointed agent meant. But I definitely think that they need to have an appointed agent, which of course could be the owner of the property within a very close period of time. That's just me.
I
Go ahead,
actually
Peggy.
remember we discussed this at length in the ad hoc committee, but it's been over, I don't know how many, 6 months. We must not have come to any consensus to have left that off, but having someone who can arrive quickly on the scene if there's an issue is definitely a good idea, in my opinion.
Well, so this would be the kind of direction, and then code language would be more specific. But so if you have a thought on one of these that you would gravitate towards, that direction would be helpful. But
Is your concern that it says there are no restrictions on the owners or appointed agents' residence? Or what sentence are you struggling with?
I believe that there needs to be somebody right here in this city who can react in a fairly short period of time if there's the need for that.
Sounds good.
Everybody agree?
all right, next is penalties. We go back to it. So the ad hoc committee's recommendation was a consolidated penalty. So looking at when there's non-compliance with registration or unpermitted operation, that there's be a, for example, 2,000 or 5,000 escalating offense. And there was some discussion at the operators forum about including TLT payments, and whether or not there should be some sort of, first strike warning penalty. And this, so this recommendation is as opposed to the current policy of there being a violation for land use, violation for business license, violation for TLT payments that may not be coordinated at the same time.
So this was an item that, well, what the public doesn't know, our ad hoc committee had people who disagreed on this issue. It was actually a good little piece of democracy. I was shocked at the height of the fees that they wanted to charge. I did not expect anybody to come up with those numbers. I would be ambivalent if we allow a lower fee on the first one, but I'm willing to accept the ad hoc committees and the planning commission's recommendation.
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to add that the code construction on this probably will look different than the concept that is on the board there, just because of how these different regulations, whether it's for business licenses, transient lodging tax, or land use, or the authority for those comes from different places, and the code enforcement and penalty provisions we may have to go into different parts of the code just to synchronize all of those.
So, Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking the same thing about the price. I mean, I guess, somebody could get penalized here, and maybe they didn't know exactly what they were looking at, or didn't quite read everything clearly. I don't know, but I guess if we have some discretion, maybe whoever's handing these outs could go, okay, well, we can cut you some slack, or we just go $1,000 on the first offense, 3,000 on the second.
If I remember correctly, and maybe Peggy, only 25% are paying the taxes only. So I think that's why we came up with that amount, because there's such a small amount of people actually paying the taxes. That perhaps that would trigger more compliance, a higher fee.
It is, they are high. I was kind of shocked too, but I came around. But I would add the caveat that we have to make very sure when they're handed their business license or the permit that they are given something in writing, making it very clear what the penalties are for non-compliance.
How do we monitor this? Like, who would be responsible for monitoring? Like, who's paying their TLT and who's?
So there's kind of a coordination there between finance and planning. As part of the update, community development started using a tool that monitors when people are active and having rentals. And then finance receives quarterly remittances based on activity that taxes would be due. So there's a kind of coordination with this new kind of tracking software of who's renting when and how much, and then the quarterly reporting, and then also the TLT will be in the new OpenGov software as well. So the idea is that the monitoring and tracking of that is kind of the confluence of all of the software updates happening across finance, community development as a whole.
Can I ask, how did y'all come to these numbers? Is this like how did we land on this?
You talking about the fine numbers?
Yeah,
I don't actually remember.
because I guess I would be curious if they're based on something objective, like we suspect that by not paying TLT, you have not paid X amount, and so therefore it's this number, or we just like these.
I recall we wanted to make it clear from the get-go that we're serious about this, but it wasn't tied to any lost fees or anything.
And I believe there was also discussion about not necessarily the actual number figures, but scaling fines to a business operation, kind of seeing a vacation rental more as a business and kind of a conversation about what fines correspond to those sorts of activities at the ad hoc level.
Is it impossible to look, and this sounds actually like a lot of staff time that I'm requesting, so I might just stop talking, but is it possible to go back and see when they started operating and calculate the fee? Or is that just too cumbersome?
So I think kind of the 10,000-foot view of these would be going forward, once the policy is in place, this is for non-compliance starting at the,
Totally. What I'm saying is we passed this, it's effective April 1st. Okay, great. So if April 1st forward, someone did not, then we would say April 1st forward, say July 1st, we find out, then we would April, May, June, July, charge them charge them the tax and say you owe us back this much.
so consider kind of an escalating fee structure as opposed to the kind of consolidated 1-2.
Or a flat monthly rate, right? So like for 12 months of operating, you didn't pay TLT, therefore $100 a month or whatever is a average number.
I think doesn't the state regulate how the TLT is charged per night
Yeah,
at
and then
X percent?
the
Yeah.
TLT penalties are written in, I think, the finance title on the code, and it's interest and a more complicated formula than the land use and business license penalties. So that would be a separate conversation as well of how those fees get incorporated into this.
What I remember from that meeting is that it was discussed as totally a deterrent. That, the penalty should be grave enough that people go into it knowing that if they don't pay it, they're gonna have to be major penalties. So, it does, do we agree on that concept? And then we can talk about the price. Does everybody agree? Okay. Are we, Mike suggested different numbers, 1,000 and 4,000. Is that, and 3,000, okay. The, so,
We can bring back code language after the planning
Okay.
commission and talk about that further
All right.
later on in the process as well.
okay.
I think it may be possible for the new software that we recently got to have some calculating or tracking function. That's something that we can look into to see if it has an accumulator function, and that would answer that question. So we'll find out.
Well, in my mind, even if they were found not to be paying, for instance, we would fine them, but then we would also expect reimbursement for what they didn't pay, correct?
Yeah, and that was heard at the operator forum as well, kind of talking about the TLT accumulation versus just the penalties for the non-compliant operation.
I'm sorry, this might answer the question Jerry was thinking about maybe. It's possible also that the report might be able to run something like people detected since the last scan who have not been on your rolls, and possibly if it's running actively, it might know how many months they had not been paying, and that could be produced as a report. I don't know if that's what you were thinking, but that's a possibility.
Okay, bring more slides. One for complaints. So the ad hoc committee's recommendation was to utilize a software solution. They had talked about the C-Click Fix app, which I believe may be being phased out partially. And so I think kind of in combination with OpenGov, Rentalscape, kind of that software solution could still be a consideration, even if it isn't C-Click Fix. And then in the engagement efforts, some of the operators also talked about kind of that annual good neighbor notice being a tool to kind of tell people who to contact in what situation, and kind of having a matrix of level 1 issues, level 2 issues, and thinking about how to kind of coordinate that software option with proactive communication for those more on the spot, 10 o'clock at night, not necessarily compliance. I don't have a license, but more of a complaint in that area. So then moving on to the grandfathering and amortization, the ad hoc committee's recommendation was to look at a 90-day grandfathering window for non-compliant operators to have applied for a license and obtain that land use permit, business license, and transient lodging tax within 1 year of adoption of the new regulations. So we're looking at operators who are currently not compliant, giving them a window before the penalties would encourage them to kind of come right. In the engagement session, there was some discussion of if that 90-day window is too long, and then also whether or not kind of how strongly the kind of outreach and engagement from the city would have to be to do the kind of proactive communication of getting people signed up in that window.
I have a question. The people who are currently in compliance, they would not have to pay any more fees to relicense, correct?
Apart from the annual business license and ongoing transient lodging tax fees that they, but not a new land use permit.
Okay,
If they haven't already operated.
I'm good with.
And then finally, amortization. So when an operator has to stop operating, so the planning commission's recommendation was to amortize upon conveyance. So once the property sells, and the ad hoc committee's recommendation was that if somebody comes into compliance during the grandfathering window, they could keep operating. But then if they didn't, they would have to stop that non-compliant operation. Overall.
I know I have a question. I'm not sure what we mean by amortizing. Explain that first.
So operating, so I think the grandfathering would be being able to come into compliance without that, say, 2,000, the kind of deterrent penalties and having the window of kind of giving them a chance to come into compliance. And the amortization is that when they have to stop operating without having the penalty, keep operating, and then the penalties would be applied. So whether it's that the planning commission's recommendation was to continue operation until they sell the property or convey it in some way, and the ad hoc looked more at that specific window of a grace period. And then if they don't fulfill the requirements in the grace period, then they would incur the penalties once that grace period is over.
So what is the Lincoln City?
So the Lincoln City's policy was that the use would stop once the property is sold, so that they could continue operating without penalties, grandfathered in, and then once they sell the property, amortize at that point. So
But if they're grandfathered, they are paying the fees and they are in compliance in all other ways, right? All we're doing is not making them go through the process again. Is that correct?
So how it, how it, it had been discussed thus far focused on that deterrent penalty and whether or not, an operator can continue operating in the blue case would be without that larger penalty until they sell the property. In the green case, it would be have the 90-day window, get all your ducks in a row, then you can keep operating. And if you don't do that, there's whichever penalties council decides to impose.
So what we're discussing is non-compliant people now, remaining non-compliant, can they continue to operate
Yes.
their, all right. Council?
This is where we wanted to have this window of time, 90 days they have to apply, and within a year be in compliance. They can't continue operating outside of the other the regulations.
You're saying that they should, after the 90-day period, then they're no longer can operate as a short-term rental.
Well, I think it was, they have to apply for a land use permit within 90 days. And then within a year, they have to get the business license and start paying TLT. It's a grace period to bring them in. Some have been grandfathered since 2013 and there was nothing. Yeah.
So what I'm hearing you say is that if they're not in compliance, they get 90 days to apply, they get a year to come in compliance. If they haven't done it by the end of that year, then they're no longer can operate. Is that, everybody agree?
All right, so next steps will be code drafting, going to planning commission for workshops and hearings and comment, and then bringing the planning commission's recommendation to you for hearings and consideration. Thank you.
I love how you broke that down like that. That was much easier to understand.
Okay, we're gonna take a short break and then we're gonna hit the last item on our agenda, which is the transient lodging. I'm sorry. I just read it. The Taste Newberg contract. 10.1, transient lodging. Right. So. Yeah. So this work session is something that council used to do, and we still do on occasion. It was requested by some of the counselors. So we have already heard presentations from all of the entities. We don't need to spend any time going through those. We have plenty of people to speak, and I know a lot of you have signed up for public comment. You will get your time. The purpose of this work session is for council to ask questions of the various parties. So what we would like to do is have everybody come up who's interested and be ready to answer the specific questions that council gives. And we'll get through it as quickly as possible. At the end, we are going to vote on the Taste Newberg contract. So let's take just a short break, about 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. So by way of presentation, we're going to go through the public comments first. And our first speaker is Mary Martin Miller. I didn't want you to have to get back up. Welcome, thank you.
Duh. Good evening, I'm Mary Martin Miller. I have a commercial real estate business in downtown Newberg. I've been in Oregon since 1994. My husband and I moved here. He's an Oregonian. And we kept coming here to visit and I loved it. But moved to Newberg in 94 because we just checked the city out and we love it. We always have loved it. Brought our raised our family here, one son, and it's been great. We love the city. We love everything about it. Yes, we have our disagreements, but things have been good. So I started my commercial real estate business in 2001, and I went to Salem and Portland to learn my craft, but I always did deals in the valley and always came back here and did deals. So I've been a chamber member since 2005. I've been involved with the downtown probably since 1994 or 95, way before we had what we now have as the Newberg Downtown Coalition. And so I've been around, I've seen how things have evolved, been heavily involved at the Chehalem Cultural Center. I've been the treasurer for 11 years and we did all kinds of things. I'm still on the board there. Very active in just other organizations around town. And my business, I work with a lot of small businesses in town, just trying to help them find spaces and stuff like that, make it affordable and all that. So I see the struggles that a lot of the small business people around here have. And, you know, it speaks to me because I see how busy everybody is and how people are all trying to, you know, make something of themselves. I was very sick the last meeting, but I listened to the entire video of the meeting because I wanted to be here, but I couldn't be. And it struck me that, you know, I'm familiar with Taste Newberg and I like what they've done and I know that they have done some really great things. I also know that the chamber, which I'm now an ambassador with, every time we get somebody in town, every time somebody's gonna come new to the area, Scott Parker or Merrill will put out a big all points bullet and say, get out there. We rally, we get people together, we do what we have to do to make it all work. So from the ground up, I can see a lot of the foot soldiers being the chamber. I also see how wonderful the Newberg Downtown Association is. But we've kind of gone back and forth and back and forth because it's difficult without any funding to, you know, have a really robust organization. So it came to my attention that there was some discussion over where the TLT funds should go. And it just seems more than fair that some of that money should go to these other organizations that also work with Taste Newberg. I can think of a lot of examples, but whenever somebody is new to town, I know that at one point, Taste Newberg was putting on the Oregon Lodging Association up at the Allison. And I know that the chamber was involved in helping with that. And there's all kinds of things that we do sort of collaboratively. And so I really feel strongly that if we're gonna do something with the TLT funds, I know the city has a certain amount, but why couldn't we have a small amount for these other organizations so that they can, you know, make it? Because really, it takes all of us to do this, really does. And I'm, like a lot of Americans, tired of everybody fighting. And I'd like to see us prove that we're better than that and we can get along and let's all go and get this done because we all help bring people to this area. And so there are 3 fine organizations. I'd love you to reconsider or think about how we could share in the funds. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is John Bridges.
Good evening. I'm gonna bring a little bit of a historical perspective to this. I don't know if y'all know that the city established the transient occupancy tax back in 1976. At that time, it was used to fund the visitor center. and it was done so through a percentage mechanism. That was codified in 1996 by one of your ordinances that applied 50% of the allotment of transit occupancy tax to the chamber to operate the visitor center. You know, over time, that percentage has changed, and I can tell you that I worked extensively with the city in 2007 and 2008. You know, here's a nice memo from Dan Denichich. It's got a analysis of what percentage there is. It's anticipating that the Allison is going to open up and that the amount of transient occupancy tax revenue was going to increase significantly. And, you know, we worked through all of the different ideas, and the city spent a lot of time considering what are all the ways you can spend this money. And one of the things that came about in 2007 and 2008 is that the state changed the rules about what it could be spent on, and you know, and what you had to spend any increase on. So we essentially put together a ordinance and said, hey, we're going to start at 30% to operate the visitor center. I kind of find that this is an ironic time to have this conversation. And one thing I would respectfully disagree with, we didn't get an opportunity to do presentation. Of the three organizations you just heard about, we weren't asked to come and say, hey, here's what we'd like you to do. Here's what we think you ought to do. And I say that's ironic because Wednesday of this week, the chamber's putting on their award ceremony. That award ceremony is primarily about celebrating collaborations in our community. It's great people that engage in great volunteerism to greatly expand the benefits to our community. And that's what that night is all about. And typically we do a great job collaborating. I think we're having some challenges with that right now. But we need your leadership to help direct that and have everybody who is, you know, participating and trying to advance the community participate together, not saying I can only do it ourselves. And, you know, I've done plenty of these resolutions. This isn't a single contractor. You can't really say that with a straight face. Anybody can do efforts to advance tourism in our community. So, you know, it's iconic for a community to have a visitor center, but I need you to understand the business side of it. People won't come to you and have a confidential meeting with you to talk about relocating their business or locating their business here until they've gone to our website and done research on what kind of demographics we have, what kind of business community has. So you're never going to get that private confidential meeting unless we exist and we're supported, so we can give all those people that want to kick the door to good old Newberg business community can do it, and then get Newberg on the short list of where they want to locate or relocate. And so we need those resources. Those resources help everybody in the community. So I'd hope you consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Next, we have James Nelson.
Good evening, James Nelson from McMinnville. I'm the Art Harvest Studio Tour Coordinator. It's going to be my 9th year. It's a privilege to represent the artists of Yamhill County. We had our 30th celebration last year, and we've represented over 250 artists over those 30 years. Quite a few of them are Newberg artists. In fact, last year, 19 Newberg artists were represented. They opened 15 studios, and usually they see about 200 people visiting a studio. So that's 3,000 people. So we're really proud of that. They also make on an average of $500 an artist. So we're talking about $10,000 that comes into your artist community. So you know how important the tour is for the artists, but it's also important to you folks and to Newberg because the longer they stay here, they have to eat, go to the bathroom. They have to, they can stay here if there's enough activity here. So my comment is about the Newberg Visitor Center, the wonderful people there, Scott and Merrill, that support our exhibit. We do a Newberg exhibit there every year. It's up for the month of September. They sell buttons. They promote the tour. We have artists come there whenever there's meetings at this facility. The artists come, represent themselves, and talk about the tour. So that month is a very important time. And so if you look at what the Visitor Center does for us, it's really very important. And then other exhibits occur there because you know they have a changing exhibit program. So many of our artists get a chance to show their work as well. So I really encourage whatever you can do to help maintain and support that facility. I think the artist community, the cultural arts community, is even more than ever important in the health of a community, particularly with what's going on in the world right now. We need our creative people healthy out there and excited about making their art, showing their art, and possibly selling it. So the Cultural Center is the other opportunity for us every other year to show artwork. And they do an all artists show, all of Yamhill County artists. And then Wonderful Art Elements features the artists that they represent in the tour in their front windows. We also have other locations that show artists' work and help in whatever way they can. So I love our work with the Newberg Visitor Center, and I hope that will continue. And so whatever you can do, I thank you very much. I leave my 42 seconds to someone else.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Keenan O'Hearn.
Hi. Yeah, my name's Keenan O'Hearn. Thank you, Council. I'm reading as proxy for Alyssa Johnson, who was the previous treasurer for the Board of Directors of the Chamber of Commerce. Dear members of City Council, I'm speaking today to express my strong support for the Chamber of Commerce as it pertains to the transient lodging tax revenue supporting the Physical Visitor Center located at the Chehalem Valley Chamber of Commerce office. I served as treasurer of the CCC from 2019 to 2024 and witnessed the agreements between the City of Newberg, the Chamber's move to the current location, as well as the deterioration of the relationships between the Taste and CCC. We all experienced a huge dip in revenue from 2020 and 2021, and thankfully, we have seen things to start to rebuild in the past few years. Walk-in visitors to the center have steadily increased over the past 5 years, with an all-time high of 1,497 people coming through the doors and 1,400 phone call inquiries in 2024. Allocating 5% of TLT funds to the Visitor Center would allow the Chamber to expand services, support businesses, which ultimately benefits the Taste in Downtown Coalition. I urge you to support funding to the Visitor Center. The Chamber of Commerce has a long history of hosting the Visitor Center for the City of Newberg. The Chamber agreed to move back to the downtown location and sign a long-term lease that was more expensive than the prior location at the urging of the city. To withdraw support for the Visitor Center would be a detriment to the success of the Chamber as well as visitors and residents that use the center as a resource. The Visitor Center has also benefited from the Chamber hosting events on First Friday. Monthly rotating artists provide an attraction to the center, like we just heard, and make it a destination to kick off a trip to Newberg. The budget of the CCC is very tight, and the portion of funds that the CCC receives from the city go directly to the visitor center expenses. The chamber has received around $3,700 monthly for the past few years, which is split between rent, utilities, and employee compensation for running the visitor center directly. The amount received by the chamber has been less than the actual cost of running the center, but the chamber has continued to host this center gratefully. The chamber works on economic development, government affairs, improving the livability of Newberg, and the championing of our business owners, like myself. The visitor center is a welcome point for the wine country. Support of tourism is vital to our community, but it is also supporting a visitor center and our business community through our Chamber of Commerce that is of paramount importance. These organizations should be working together to help make Newberg the gateway to wine country and a wonderful place to call home. Sincerely, Alyssa Johnson. Thank you so much. Ooh, 1 minute. I rocked that.
And next is Megan Carter. Hi, Megan, welcome. Okay, your clock is running.
I could do that to myself. Well, good evening. My name is Megan Carta. I'm the owner of Lifestyle Properties Vacation Rentals and Pinot Car Wine Tours. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today about the TLT dollars. I want to be clear from the start. I do believe that this is not the organization's decision to make. The allocation of these funds is ultimately the responsibility of the city of Newberg. However, the process that has unfolded has put Taste Newberg in a position where we should never have been in. When Phil and I attended the last two stable table meetings to represent Taste Newberg, it was clear that the group was not as stable as it suggests. After the following Taste Newberg board meeting, we were asked to gather more information from other organizations about how the money would be spent. And we made the request via email. However, at the second stable table meeting, this information was not present. Instead, all three organizations agreed that the best course of action was to ask the city to decide what would be best for each of us. In observing our presentation to the city council, I don't believe that our delivery went as expected. But the core message was simple. We should not be making the decision that isn't ours to make. The formation of Taste Newberg was meant to remove this burden from the city, and yet here we are again, being asked to divide funding when our mission is clear: to market and promote Newberg to generate heads and beds and tourism to our community. I believe that the TLT funds should be allocated to support all efforts that contribute to the goal of attracting visitors to our town. Each of these three organizations involved are doing great work that supports tourism, and each of us should have access to these funds. However, it's the city's responsibility to determine how the money is distributed to ensure that it is being used appropriately. To maintain transparency, I encourage any organization receiving TLT funds to provide clear records that show exactly where the TLT dollars are spent. The city should be able to verify that the TLT dollars were used in accordance with legal allegations, while any additional funds, whether from fundraising, grants, or other sources, should be accounted for separately. This level of transparency ensures that we are all being good stewards of the funds entrusted to us. Other cities have found ways to distribute the TLT funds effectively. For example, Cannon Beach Chamber manages all DMO, Destination Marketing Organization activities, and allocates monies for beautification projects like benches and flowers. Dundee, on the other hand, uses TLD dollars additionally for destination development like public restrooms in the new park and landscaping improvements. McMinnville, on the other hand, allocates all TLT funds to marketing efforts. Every city approaches this differently, but the key takeaway is that the city council's role
is to decide how these funds are used and to hold the recipients accountable. I firmly believe that the TLC funds can and should be used in support of all organizations involved in tourism. The challenge is determining the right allocation method. The bigger question that we need to ask ourselves is, how do we move forward together once this decision, one that should have been made from the city to start, is behind us? At the heart of this issue, we all share the same goal, to bring visitors to Newberg and ensure that they have welcoming, hospitable experiences. If we fail to work cohesively, we're going to not only disservice our organizations, but our entire community. We are all volunteers, dedicating our time, energy, and resources to something bigger than ourselves. Our businesses, our family, and our personal lives all require attention, yet we are here because we care about Newberg. A thriving community benefits everyone. When our businesses or organizations are strong, it strengthens others around it. When our neighboring communities are doing well, it has a ripple effect as well. Lately, I've been reflecting on the idea of giving back. In my personal life, I set aside 10% for my church and my faith for something that's greater than myself. In business, we support charities, team members in need, and causes that align with our values. I see no reason that we cannot approach a situation with the same mindset, finding resolution that strengthens our entire community. Our businesses, our families, our visitors all deserve better than the division that we have seen in our stable table and the ripples in the community. It is time for us to focus on transparency and cooperation. Let's put our energy into creating healthier and more unified Newberg. Thank you. Sorry for going on.
Thank you. Very, very well said. It has come to my attention that the chamber does not feel that they have been given an opportunity to present their case. So, Scott, this is your opportunity to come in and say whatever it is that you think hasn't come out or isn't going to come out in this meeting. Bring whoever you want with.
Lindsay. Wow, thank you for letting us speak. I'm Scott. For those of you that don't know me, this is Lindsay. I'm the executive director of the chamber, and Lindsay's the board president. I mean, we've heard great comments from everybody. It's unfortunate that it's come to this, that we couldn't all come to the table with a unified ask, because we've had meetings and we all agree that all three organizations are valuable, and we're just asking for a piece of the pie. We wanted a percentage versus a flat rate because we see the pie getting bigger, and when the pie gets bigger, everyone benefits. So that's all we're saying is, we're all doing good work, but having to do a fundraiser that's a golf tournament takes resources away from what we do. And while maybe that's not a bad idea, we have taken some feedback to heart at our gala on Wednesday. We're going to do a live auction. I hope you're all there bidding on it, because that's a way to raise some funds. We started doing a 50-50 raffle at our greeters. So we are looking at ways to get more money in the chamber, but I think, we do help promote a strong visitor economy, and I don't think it's out of the question to want a percentage of TLT funds to help stabilize what we do. I am really just winging it up here right now. I didn't have prepared remarks because I didn't think we were going to be able to, but I appreciate you letting us come up and talk. Feel free to jump in.
I will just add that all three organizations do amazing work with the betterment of supporting a thriving community. And you can read in our packet and everything that we've given you how specifically we do that. Like Scott said, we have gone back to the table and we are constantly thinking of new ways to innovate and bring those funds in. However, it's hard and we need that consistent fund. We need those consistent funds in the beginning so that we can make those actions actionable. So I really just urge you to consider what you've heard tonight, and that all three organizations, we get the gist. We want to work together. We will work together. And I think coming out of this will be a much stronger, stable table.
And the table was, I feel like it was fairly stable until money was talked about. We did meet pretty regularly. And we talked about common goals and what was going on in the community and what groups were doing what. And it really was just until money came that it got dicey. And even throughout all of it, we all still hold fast that we are all valuable organizations. I'm looking across the room, you know, one of the first things I did was start a vaudeville show, and our mission is a non-political, family-friendly evening of entertainment. I mean, that we just want people to all have fun and get along. If you've been to Greeters, you know that. We were at the Allison Inn and Spa on Friday with a combined McMinnville Greeters. We had over 160 people, and the feedback we got was amazing. Like, you guys are doing a good job. And so, you know, the director of the McMinnville Chamber, you know, was giving me grief. He's like, your rates are so low. You know, I'm getting grief from my constituents that you have a nonprofit rate that's way lower than ours. I'm like, well, yes, because we're serving people with that low rate. And we don't feel like raising our rate is a good way to help the business community, by saying our way of helping you is to charge you more money for what we do. So we think we've got a very good, a good system in place. We're growing so far already this year. We've got 13 new members. Yeah, 13. 13 new members. So anyway, you know, we're here for any questions, and just, you know, thanks for giving us a chance to.
Well, just sit right there and, council,
Fire away.
this is our opportunity. Does anybody have questions for the chamber?
So can you tell me what are the hours through the week and weekends? What's the hours?
The visitor center is Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and by appointment other times. We've got groups that come in and use it on evenings, weekends. I mean, we're accommodating to any group that wants to use the space, but like as far as walk-in traffic, we're Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. We really just can't staff it any longer than that.
Hey, Scott. I don't know if you can put a number on this. In Newberg, the chamber works with businesses, commerce, of course, as well as does some work with tourism. Would you be willing to put a number percentage of how the time is split, or the effort?
Well, I feel, yeah, that's a great question. Cause I mean, sometimes how can you split hairs if there's a phone call, and a lot of times you could say, oh, is this tourism based or is this local business based? I think Merrill's time is roughly 50-50, and mine's sort of 30-70, 20-80, more on chamber side, but Merrill's is usually split about 50-50. I'm out and about doing meetings and things, and she's the one boots on the ground, greeting people as they come in and fielding 99.9% of the calls because my phone lives on DND.
Are there any other questions for the chamber? Okay, go ahead, Robin.
I don't have it pulled up, but you did mention how many impressions that went to your website for tourism, I believe. But when I went to your website, there really wasn't anything about tourism. It was mainly just businesses. There's a little at the bottom, something about your visitor center. So I'm wondering where you arrived. There is a header for taste. So I'm wondering if the numbers that the traffic, your website traffic for tourism, if that is to taste, because there's nothing on your website that I could see. And I went through each one. According to your website, there's just a little bit down there at the bottom.
Well,
The visitor center. So,
I don't know, I can't speak to click-throughs to taste. I mean, Meryl might be able to
Well,
speak
cause
to
I'm
that,
like,
but
where are you getting the numbers? Cause there's nothing on your website
that's just
that
traffic.
says tourism.
It's traffic to the website, right?
Excuse me, can we have you come up to the mic so that people online can hear? Thank you. I appreciate it, Meryl.
Okay. I'm just wondering where you're getting that information is all.
Yeah, it's, so the rate is from different pages, basically on the chamber. So it's, some of it is from directory searches.
Yeah.
Some of it is for clicks on, we have a page of things to do or community resources. We also have an events calendar. So it's all of the things that people who are coming to the area might click on to basically see what's to do or where they can stay.
So how do you know they're tourists? How do you know they're not just in Newberg? I mean, how do you know where they're coming from?
I can't necessarily speak to where they're coming from. All I can say is that those are the things that people have been clicking on, and those are the pages that are more tourism facing are the traffic. Yeah.
I mean, I think it goes too to what like John Bridges was saying, if someone's gonna research a community, I'm thinking of going to possibly move somewhere, and before I visit it, I'm gonna go, I mean, that's where I go. I go to the Chamber of Commerce site. I wanna see what the industries are in the community. I wanna find out what the schools are like. So it's research. I mean, obviously, yeah, you can't.
I can give you an example from today. So I got a phone call from someone from Paso Robles, and she is from California. And she is an event planner, and she was planning a bachelorette party. And she said, there's so many things online and I don't know what to choose. And I just want a person to talk to that can help me plan this out. And so I took her through, different wineries she could go taste at, what locations, wineries that might be close to each other, convenient for her and her location. Also places she can go eat afterwards that are nearby. So part of what the visitor center does is field those conversations and those personal interactions with people who just want a face, they want a name, they want someone who can direct them to someone or to a business or organization very specifically when they're coming to visit. And I field those phone calls pretty much every day.
There's the question of, is that the location that you do it from?
What do you mean?
Never mind.
Okay.
Interesting.
Wait, are you implying she doesn't work from the visitor center?
Can you talk a little bit, like how much like proactive outreach do you do to our local businesses around like their tourism related work? Like having like that conversation with the event planner, but do you also like work with wineries around like what kinds of events they like to have? I guess I'm curious about like the business support side around tourism. Do I need to repeat all of that? I'm curious, like the business support side around tourism and what you all do to proactively outreach to businesses who might be interested in hosting or facilitating tourism related work.
I mean, I believe two of the written comments in your packet were from a lodging partner, Shehalem Property Management, and one was from the Fairfield Inn, who used our space for multiple things, onboarding, employee interviews, as well as, these places send their guests to the visitor center, and then they also use our materials in their businesses. Anyone, regardless of membership or not, to the chamber, brings us their calendars, Friend Prairie Gardens and Art Elements and wineries. Anyone that has anything going on brings us, how do we can we reach all of them? No, but you know, that's what our networking events are for. That's why we have chamber ambassadors that are constantly going out into the community to let them know what resources we have available and to, you know, give us your information so that we can give it out to people in the community. We just had somebody, the St. Paul, excuse me, garden that's been around for decades. They just came with free passes. They want us to give them out to all their guests. They're open in April and May, which we've already started doing. So
Thank you. So, next, if we could have, want to do taste? Let's have NDC come up. The numbers are increasing. No. So I guess, let's go ahead and kick this off briefly. Could you give us your,
Yes, of course. Hi, City Councilors. Brandon Anderson, the co-executive director of the Newberg Downtown Coalition with Kate Abora. There, Terry Emery, our board president here, as well as Lonnie Parrish, one of our board members. We have been having this conversation for a long time and looking through a lot of different opportunities to demonstrate our support of tourism in Newberg and how a thriving downtown directly equates to a solid tourism output in this town. And I'm really happy with the packet that we pulled together. Truth be told, we didn't know that we would be allowed presentations today, so we're shooting off the hip a little bit. But most importantly, we just want to be here to be able to answer any questions that you all might have about the supporting documents that we included. And show, you know, again, that there is precedent around the state for how downtown Main Street organizations like ours do have and utilize TLT funds, how the work that we're doing is actively supporting tourism, and how the work that we can do with stable funding will help us not only continue but grow these operations that we're working on currently. Yeah, I'll pause there and let my my board members and co-executive director jump in. Anything that I might have missed?
Good evening, everybody. I would also just like to tag on there. I think through the muddlement of all of this conversation, there's been an air of just speaking on the unstableness of the table, but I want to make clear that NDC as an organization has always and will always be willing to work together with not only the community, but all of our fellow organizations. I think one thing that we can say for sure is that NDC has always been on the ground. We put in the man hours, we do volunteer work, we work with organizations that aren't even our own for events to make sure they're successful for the city. So going forward through this, I just want to make sure that that is clear, that we will always be working together with everybody and willing to do so.
I have a wise adage. Number one, it doesn't matter how good a product is. If it isn't marketed, it won't go anywhere. It doesn't matter how good a marketing is. If there's no product, it won't go anywhere. So you need both. And I'd also just like to say to all of you about the chamber is that I am a visitor center person. When I travel all across the United States and Canada, when I go somewhere, I go to the darn visitor center because I love the pamphlets. They can tell me. I don't have to go on my phone and have to go through this pop-up and this pop-up and this pop-up. They will give me current information about where to hike, where to do everything. So I really think that we've taken the wrong tact about a visitor center, and I think it's a very necessary thing. I noticed that nobody did offer to take it over.
I'm not quite sure what that meant.
I heard somebody in the back of the room say, "Okay, boomer."
Oh, okay.
I know,
Oh, yeah,
but
we're
I
old.
love
See,
paper.
we're the old people.
And we are the ones with the money, so hey.
We're the old people in this, on our organization, and we kid about it and stuff. You know, it's been, I spoke last time about really wanting us to work together.
and I am hoping, today I'm really hopeful. I met with, Taste Executive Director and Dennis Lewis, dear friend. We helped found the cultural center together, you know, about moving forward, working together. And there was so much support from them. It's like, why, I didn't understand why this hasn't been going on. It's the money. As soon as the money came into question, and it's just really too bad. But I'm filled with some hope today that this will move forward. I'm hoping that that the city council will look at this with a new light. When we started, and I was with John and Elise on the very beginning, as I said before, TLT funds can be used for many more things than we could then. I had no idea the amount of money that would come through. As a person on that committee, I would have spread it. NDC didn't exist back then, it was many years ago. But I'd certainly look at spreading it now. I mean, we all need each other. I get that some need more money. We can help fundraise, but if we have security with an executive director, then we can't. We have none. So all the work we do is volunteer, you know, including, I do not use a blower in the Naps bus stop. That's my job. I've done it 2 years in a row. You talk about volunteering and have urine blowing all over your face, cleaning up their stuff. So, and I just, this is funny because then I'm going to represent the Allison right now. I'm a jack of all trades. Comments were made at the last city council meeting from Taste about how they've improved not the occupant rates, but the tourism rates, which led me to believe that they raised the occupancy rates. The occupancy at the Allison has not raised in 3 years, so it's not growing. They've raised the room rates, so the revenue has, right? And the biggest concern they have is the downtown. People are going to stop going there because there's other options. If we don't have a downtown that's like McMinnville, we got a ways to go to get there, but I think we can be there. You know, we'll lose business and we'll all lose. So I just hope you take that all into consideration and know that it's true. Someone said it tonight about your leadership of working together and helping lead us to work together. We talked about that today too. We're going to work together. That's what we do, right? And we all care about this community. So thank you.
All right, Peggy.
Either director or any of you, I suppose, but what specific plans do you have to increase tourism in Newberg through the Newberg Downtown Coalition?
Yeah, there's outside of the events that we're already hosting, there's a big one that we're focused on right now, which is investing in the public art, including the Camellia Trail, our public art sculptures that we have floating around. That's been proven, again, in your packet, you'll see it's been proven to be a direct tourism draw. Outside of that, the events that we are actively hosting and hoping to bring forth in the future and continue contributing in, including the one that happened at the Cultural Center this weekend, Newgrass. That was a huge success. And we as the Downtown Coalition are already talking with Christian about next year and bringing more of that in and supporting that even more. On top of that, the beautification that I mentioned last time I was in front of this council is a huge part of this. We see the moss on the sidewalks, we see the moss on the awnings, we see, trash, and we think that there is a huge opportunity there to make a measurable difference in a short amount of time, just by making sure as the sun starts coming back out, occasionally in the spring, but more in the summer, that's right, that we want our downtown to be shiny and new, so that when people are coming to visit, even if they're driving through to go somewhere else, they might stop and say, wow, this is a cute downtown. And truly part of the difficult part of this whole process and looking at strategic planning has been not knowing if we're waiting on this decision to be able to know if we're going to be able to put a lot of those in place. But we have outlined in our packet a lot of great options that we have to make a concrete difference in the tourism with the activities that we're actively having in flight and ones that we are planning on in the future. Anything to add?
some other additional things that we are excited about and that I know that you all will be excited about too is implementing some campaigns like I'm sure you've seen in McMinnville, they've done passports where people will get a printout with lists of participating merchants and then they get to go and collect stamps and visit. Um, the success of those requires merchant participation, which requires us investing in our merchant community and our merchant committee. So our ability to invest into our merchants makes those events possible.
What do you mean? I mean, how would you invest in the merchants? What did you mean by that?
Right, so that comes with like supporting them with their storefronts. That comes with supporting them with running their own events or participating in First Friday. So we are actively providing artists for them in those situations. We are fielding any amount of questions, considering like their safety and how they can go forward with that or what permits they might need and new businesses, what they'll need from the city, what they'll need from the state. A lot of that is coming from us as far as merchant support, and just investing in creating that. So, I mean, in the past, our connectedness as a downtown has kind of disintegrated. And as a current downtown business owner, it's been really important to me to rebuild that just line of communication. So right now we've been building up a merchant committee group communication. And through that, we've been able to up our participation in First Friday. We've been able to up our participation in just gathering. I don't know if you've seen, but we were able to gather a lot of our women-owned businesses for a photo shoot for International Women's Day. Earlier this month, we got a great group of our women-owned businesses together, just to take a photo and share and provide support to each other. And that all comes through NDC.
One of the things that, that the Public Art Council is working on, and I also have Art Elements, I do have a business downtown, is having an art trail that'll go out to the wineries. It's one of the Allison's dreams is to connect wineries with sculptures. You've seen a few of the sculptures around. So we're looking forward to that. And a personal goal for, as a fundraiser would be have a huge art festival. I think as much as I appreciate wine and wineries, that the trend is changing, that Newberg needs more than wine. And I feel that the arts are very much supportive, like James was talking about with the Arts Alliance and the studio tours. Those bring in many people. So that's one of the things in the works, and I'm working on a makerspace in the old mill building. I think that will change the face of downtown. It'll bring tourists in. You want to come see something being made. You want a mantle made for your home. The Sawduster Group, I have a space for them. They can come. I think we just need to look broadly at what's going to happen here and really plan the future for Newberg. I mean, it's bright. We have so many opportunities. And then Taste, I understand, is working on recreation stuff, which is too bad that we aren't part of that conversation because I've been around Newberg forever. We've done many, many strategic plans. And that's great. I think that's awesome and I'd like to be part of that. So there's many things that we can offer. And if we all work together, it's unlimited what we can do.
Lonnie, can I make sure that I understood you correctly on the Allison front? So the occupancy rates have been stagnant for the last 3 years. Did I hear
They've
that?
gone down.
They've gone down. Okay.
It's not something we broadly share.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But
okay.
that's why I was going to have the interim general manager come speak and the gentleman that runs our family office that oversees the Allison and everything that we do, except for Ada, to speak, but we were told there would be no presentation, so that's why I'm speaking. So,
Okay, no, that's helpful, thank you.
Hey, thank you guys for coming, and speaking. So in all this research that I've done, I've called around some other cities just to see what they do. And I know McMinnville, so I called them and talked to, I can't remember her name, but the lady that does the marketing for their downtown association. Cause I was like, what are you guys doing? You have a very successful program. And they have an EID, which is an economic improvement district. And I'm wondering if you guys have ever considered doing that here.
You know, and I read about that as well, knowing that they did it, but I think they did it back in the eighties.
Yeah, they
And
started
it
in
was the
1982.
merchants and the building owners themselves that did it.
Mhm.
And I think it probably came through Main Street program and it's one of the suggestions that they have. But like we've said, is we have not had the capacity to belong and use that Main Street program for what it should be. But we have thought of a few things like that, but at this point, a lot of those businesses are just scraping through. So you know, it's hard to know.
There's a gentleman that works at the gallery was part of that whole McMinnville movement. And the difference between Newberg and McMinnville, I think, has a lot to do with the county seat. But they have business owners that have wealth. Wealth. And they said, hey, let's work as a community and put our money to changing downtown. There's probably like 6 families. So if you take a look at who owns the buildings in Newberg, I think there's a lot of them are out of state. So, and I've been thinking about the cleaning too. We put in the Fox and I cleaned out the flower bed in front of Critter Cabana, and you'll see baby daffodils out there. That's the difference. We don't have a lot of wealthy business owners in Newburgh. We just don't. Dennis and I were talking about who we could tap for funds, but it's not, it will never be like McMinnville unless we get huge families with wealth come in, which will change. Oh, good. Hi, Sean.
You know, where we interview all of the property owners, and something like 70% of the McMinnville building owners operate a business out of their building. So they have you know, they have skin in the game. They own the building.
They own their building.
And
Mhm.
you can either do it so that you tax or you raise funds from the building owner or you raise funds from the business owners. And over the years, we've surveyed both those groups. And they've never had any kind of significant support. And that's the disconnect, is almost all of our buildings are not owner occupied.
John, thank you very much.
Yeah.
I do hope that at some point in time, I would really like to see all 3 groups join together and be one group. Well,
You can't have that.
why?
Because they need to be separate, because one needs to be 501(c)(3). There's different organizations of nonprofits, so you have to have some that can require that they can get grants, some that can do this and that. So it's never, and Main Street specifically says to not have them combined. Even though it's easier for you guys, it's not easy for the rest of them.
And I misspoke when I said we will and we want to, is we want to work together as one, not be one entity.
Well, okay. I still think it could be done if you wanted it to. But, because I know from years ago why some of these different organizations split off and started their own thing. And there was some bad blood in there. And I just wish that as adults, we could get past that and work together as one team. The thing that still kind of irritates me is this whole thing with, you know, cleaning up the buildings. you do a great job, Lonnie. I mean, everything that you've done has been really good, and other businesses also downtown, um, they do a great job. So it bothers me a little bit that somehow we've got to go in and fix up somebody else's building that, you know, they ought to take the pride of ownership. I've never had anybody give me any money, and so it to help me with my building, I just because I want to keep my place nice, and I don't know how. I don't. Maybe you could do this tax or something like McMinnville has somehow, because if the guys that own the buildings, guys and ladies that own the buildings, and they're not around here, well, they still ought to. There still should be a consequence for letting their buildings deteriorate and the awnings look like crap out there. And, you know, thank God for those that do take pride of ownership in their businesses, their buildings, not businesses. The businesses are doing good, but the buildings. But that's still something that just kind of bugs me a little bit.
We always wondered if there could be a city ordinance on that, but I don't know about that. But we did look around and we did notice that the city's properties were not all that clean and tidy either. So we wondered if maybe it's filtering down from the top.
The street a lot lately, and across from the city hall, I went to go look at the mouse. There are leaves that are pasted all over the corner, all underneath the sale sign. I walk up the street, there's garbage strewn about, and it's right across the street from the city, and everyone loves the mouse, right? It gets a lot of traffic. And what you had said about pride of ownership, and I looked across the street and I thought, well, there's City Hall right there. This is their responsibility, but I heard that we could trade, that I could bring my mower on my free time and mow the lawn and I could get some money from you guys. And in fact, just me personally, it's not about NDC. That was offensive. I'm busy, and I help when I can, and to trade money for like, am I gonna drag Scott down to mow the lawn and clean up the
Just once.
leaves? Yeah, once, like we never got him there. So, I think we all just need to look around. Maybe it's because we don't see, but I was like, I'm not gonna tell Mike that, that's gonna make him mad, but I had to, sorry. Yeah. So, it's still there. I looked at it yesterday. That was 2 weeks ago. I have a video. I don't think.
Well, I have to follow that up now. You will notice our new goals for this year, goal number 1 and number 2 are to make our downtown look better. I absolutely agree with you. And the city the city properties are no exception. They don't look any better than anybody else's and worse than some. So, I agree with you. I would like to see emphasis put on that as well. I don't know now. All right, go ahead, Will.
So two things. First of all, I'm going to rake up the leaves at the Butler property because I agree with you, they're unsatisfactory. So I'm going to do that personally. Secondly, we have a contract that's in this year's budget for a landscaping contract that's going to hit a wide area because we don't have the staffing to do the DEQ demands, to do all the valve exercising and the clean outs. We've grown a lot and our staff hasn't grown. So some of that stuff, I'll be honest, it's falling by the wayside. So we're hoping that after July 1st, we're going to get a lot better effort and I will rake up those leaves.
I guess one piece that I would like to chime in, like Mike, I agree that pride of ownership piece is really huge. I also want to call out the incredible service that NDC is doing by providing that cleanup. I think what you all called out about not having wealthy business owners, and a lot of our business owners in the downtown scraping by the skin of their teeth. I worry that if we start leveraging fees or extra taxes, that we will lose more of our longstanding downtown businesses. So I guess I just want to call out, yes, I wish that everyone could be out cleaning and painting And I also so value the work that you all are doing because I think anything that we can do to minimize our downtown businesses from extra fees to protect their very skinny margins is important.
There's so many things that we can do if we had the manpower. Like I've talked to Sherwin Williams. I can get us paint. We can repaint the entire downtown. I can get us volunteers. But we can't do anything without some stability in our group. You know, there's lots of things that we can do. And when we were putting the sculpture up, a woman walked by and she's taking a picture and she's looking around and we're like, do you want to open a business? And she's like, I do. So we had a you did, because I ran off to get weeding materials.
Right.
Did you finish that?
Well, yeah, and I'm trying to find out, she wanted to rent one place. Nobody has the information on who owns all the buildings and all the contact information. But there are people out there that are basically looking. But again, you're correct, as many of them are women. And they're single or they, have a family at home, so they do not have that extra time. They don't have employees. So I think we have to be very mindful of what we ask them because they're just trying to scrape a living
Like
together.
the bubble ladies went out of business and I know there's been some talk about security, family security and making sure people have job security. These people that open businesses downtown, like this woman said, I've lived in Newberg 18 years and I'm ready to take this plunge. I want to open a cookie store. And I thought to myself, she is probably risking everything she's got to go into this she wants that cute little place that was the candy store. And, so I owe it to her too, to try to make her downtown successful that she can stay in business. So.
Yeah, we need the feet on the street.
Okay.
So if nobody has any more questions for them, I'd like to go ahead and move on. Thank you very much. So Taste Newberg. So we all heard, you're satisfied with the presentation you guys made? Okay, good. So who has questions for Taste Newberg?
Okay, hi, and I appreciate you being here. And I also just want to recognize that this has been uncomfortable and I want to really reiterate my support for Taste and the work that all of you do, including Lee as the executive director. I do still feel like my question is not answered on conversion and what you're doing to drive a conversion metric and why it hasn't existed until as of recently. And I also would like your response to the fact that the Allison has not increased occupancy in the last 3 years. And what I have been told in meetings and what has been presented to this board really implied that it had. And this feels like a pattern right now of not feeling like I'm getting full answers. And it makes me very uncomfortable to say that in this setting. But I felt like the public comment that was given had implications that what we were asking was illegal. And well, by quoting state statute that I feel like didn't finish the sentence to include the rest of the statute for use provisions. So I guess those are my 3 questions. Conversion metric, why it hasn't been clearly stated, where the occupancy has grown, and if it hasn't, and if it really truly is that we're supporting the Allison, which has always been kind of the answer I've been given, is that we owe it to the Allison to market the Allison to make sure that we increase TLT. If it in fact is just that the Allison increased their room rates, that does not feel like a good return on my investment as a city councilor making this decision tonight.
Yeah, I can dive in and answer some of those. I may ask you to repeat some of those questions as I talk, but those are definitely valid questions. I think to talk about return, your first question about conversion rates. marketing in general, can be hard to track depending on what you're marketing. And I think that Taste has some very strong statistics about how many people are visiting our website, where they're coming from, what they're interested, and then what they're clicking on. A big challenge for us is people don't book on our site. For a whole number of reasons, that's not something they do. So to say that this person clicked through Taste's website to the Allison site and then booked is very hard to track. That's just like the nature of the marketing that we do. And I think anybody who works in marketing would express a similar element of it can be iffy to track. I think seeing increases of our web traffic in general and being able to track where those come from, and then seeing, especially with it's Datafy, right, that we do the polygons, seeing where people visit is huge, and shows us that people are in fact coming here, and they're coming here after viewing our materials. And I think that's very important to notice. So I think, Phil, do you have anything else to answer on that?
Oh,
piece?
no, I think you covered it.
Yeah, at least can you remind me what your other two questions were?
If you can speak to why it's been stated that the TLT has grown because the Allison is marketed so heavily when
Yeah.
they haven't increased their occupancy in 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Lee or Dennis could come up and speak to that as well, but part of what we do is increasing TLT, not so increasing their room rates is an important piece, but other lodging partners are also seeing growth. I think Megan could speak to that as a lodging operator. We have a new hotel coming. People are coming to Newberg. So whether or not that's coming to the Allison or not, all lodging partners should be generating TLT as was discussed earlier, as is why you're reevaluating short-term rentals. So there are more partners besides just the Allison that are also growing and invested in TLT and how that's being used. So we talk about that all the time at Taste, about how do we balance our marketing for the Allison and for other organizations, especially because the Allison has marketing of their own, and we want to make sure that we're reaching as broad an audience as possible. So we diversify our marketing and try to reach people that may not be staying at the Allison. So that's a piece of what we do.
I fully agree. I want to be clear. I agree that that is the intent, but the answer feels like it shifts when my question is asked. And
I feel
I
like
do feel like I feel like the answer that has been given is that the Allison is the primary objective to market. And when I heard the Allison stats of their own marketing dollar spend, it was concerning. And I do think it is something that we need to correct, that can you really draw a direct correlation of the increase in TLT to the marketing of Taste if in fact the Allison has not grown in occupancy? And that has been what has been stated as the sole or the primary focus, and the 70% is thrown around a lot.
If the growth is not due to the Allison, then I would ask what is it due to?
Increase in room rates.
So it is still growth at the Allison. It's fiscal growth at the Allison, not necessarily occupancy rates. But fiscal growth is still growth. I mean, I think we're kind of straying from what Taste does. Taste is a marketing organization, and we're talking beyond marketing statistics right now. We're getting into occupancy questions that I really think should be directed to the Allison.
But you started by saying it was heads and beds, right? So if you haven't increased heads and beds, you've just changed the clientele to a higher price point. That's not in fact increasing heads and beds. That's bringing more wealthy people to our town.
Do we or Dennis have any input on this?
Do you guys have a
Do
good,
we or Dennis, do you have any input? on
Yes.
this? Please,
So.
you have to come up here.
I feel like that question was answered completely, but
Oh, if you don't, I mean, I just want to, so, first of all, we don't actually get occupancy numbers from the Allison. I have so I don't want to speak for time that I was not here. I started in July of 2022. I have never seen occupancy numbers from the Allison. So whether they've gone up or down, I don't know. There is a report. It's called the STAR report. It's Smith Travel Research. We do not have enough hotels in Newberg to actually have that report. I would love to. And actually, now that we have the Fairfield,
We're right there. So we may be able to do that so that we can actually track occupancy. So we haven't been able to track occupancy from individual hotels within our community. So yes, we don't know that. So if you don't have that, and the Allison does not share that because they consider that proprietary information. If Lonnie and the people that are there now would like to share that, I vote yes, and let's figure out how we can have a matrix so we are increasing whatever that is. But the same should also be shared from, say, Megan for occupancy of vacation rentals and so forth, right? Okay. So yes. So did that help that part?
That's great. And I understand.
So
the
we
concern.
had to come up with another matrix, right? So, cause you have to figure out what is your KPI, what are your ROIs and all that. So for us, what they came out, and this started prior to my getting here, was they came out with what amount of TLT dollars are received. Prior, they have had a changeover in some accounting at the Allison. What used to happen up until about 6 months ago, I think, I forget when he left actually. The gentleman that was there would actually send me an email and tell me how much money that the Allison had given in. I could then take that amount of money from the total amount that was given from a statement that the city gives and says how much they collected. I could do a little spreadsheet. And then I could kind of figure out what the percentage of dollars were that the Allison were giving. So from that spreadsheet that we have, it is about 65% of our, to that point, of the Allison dollars. So that's the only way that we have to gauge. You have been on our board before. The board talked about doing a booking agency. There is a program that you can put on the website where you can track it. It's not completely efficient. Both Percy, who was there, is no longer at the Allison. Megan and other lodging properties did not want Taste Resources to go into a program to track those bookings. They wanted us to market, just market. So that's what we've done. I mean, the only thing that we have strayed from directly marketing is that we brought Katie on to do destination development, because you and I have talked about how we shouldn't just have people coming that drink wine. So we have programs now, we're working with the city, CPRD, for Willamette Valley, where we have the first ever dark sky experience in Oregon in our community that Travel Oregon is going to promote. We have a dark sky sanctuary in Southern Oregon. They don't even have experiences yet. We got the first one here. So we do things like that that are hard. They're not tangible. But I would just like to say from my seat, and I did speak with Lonnie earlier today, I do think that all three organizations are highly valuable. I think that you can't have a business community without a chamber dealing with business communities. I don't think you can have a downtown association without the downtown doing. I don't think you can have tourism marketing dollars coming in until you have a DMO. In my prior world, all those organizations always work together also. So I agree with that. I have no problem. Does that help? Okay.
So just to clarify, right now, all of the TLT dollars go to Taste. Is
No,
that
no,
correct?
that is
No.
not correct. So
I mean, you're the 35%
No.
share goes, okay.
So I found out recently, and I'm happy to send it to you, that we actually operate on a blended rate. And I'm probably not the best person to actually speak to this. Katie, you would be so much better at it. But, and please change the years if I'm wrong. Originally, the TLT rate was 6%. And somewhere around 2014, they upped it a 1.5%. That initial percentage was something like 17% went to tourism and 80-some% went to the city, sorry. Then they changed it 1.5%. When you changed it, that additional percent, that matrix was then switched to the 70-30. Then you changed it another, so that's how you got to the 9%. So then that 3% is at a 70-30, and the original is at the original. So what they did was they took those amounts and they merged them for what they have is called the blended rate that we now have now. So 65% goes to the city, approximately, with some little dollars and points right there. Yeah. And then 35% goes to Taste Newberg. And for my time that I have been here, there has been a contract with the chamber for $45,000 a year to go to the chamber. And discussions on the visitor center and all of that have come way before Lee was coming. Well, not actually, I was coming to Oregon because Elise was in school. My Elise, not you, Elise. But
Thank you.
before I was here.
Let's keep moving. Go ahead, Peggy.
So you just said all of these other two organizations are useful and valuable. Are they valuable for tourism?
I think it's apples and oranges.
Yeah, I think, oh, excuse me, I'm so sorry. I think they provide benefits to tourists, but I think the differentiating element is we work directly with tourists. That is our target audience. Our entire target audience is tourists. The other two entities, tourists benefit from their work, but their primary objective is not to market to tourists and to bring people here. It's wonderful that that's a piece of their work, but it's not all of it. It is all of Taste Newberg's work.
And I think it's one of those things where we have these three entities that do have their own roles and we have to stay within our lane. So, for Taste Newberg, the product example is great. Newberg is our product. So our job is to cast the net to bring the people into Newberg. It's the businesses and the chamber and the downtown coalition to continue to make Newberg a really attractive place as well. And we'll promote that. We'll promote all businesses. Can we guarantee that your business will be affected by our advertising? No, but we do want to promote all businesses that can benefit from tourism here. And one more thing, I kind of want to jump back just a little bit, is I think there is a misperception that we don't get along. And really, for me, I enjoy every single one entity of every one of their boards. I have nothing negative to say about any of those people. Again, money got involved. If you were to sit into a stable table meeting, that's the thing that we want. We are getting along. We just have this big old hiccup that happened. Are we responsible for it? Yes, we've contributed to it. I'm gonna own up to it. We've contributed to some of this perception that we've had. But Taste Newberg does a really good job of being Taste Newberg. The Downtown Coalition does a really good job of being a Downtown Coalition. The Chamber does a really good job. We want everyone to be strong in those roles that they have. We do get along. It's this allowance that the children are asking for from the parents. It's really causing problems here.
I just
Anybody
have
else?
one more question.
Go ahead.
I do want to ask on the record, what Taste Newberg, what your position is if we are to move forward with the request, I think that was recommended by Britta in the last meeting, which was the entirety of the 35% without the 45,000 going to the visitor center. What is your plan for when there's no visitor center and there's no NDC to operate the events that are driving tourists to Newberg? What is your plan?
So you're saying there would be no NDC that existed? I'm sorry. maybe
Well,
misunderstood.
I'm not gonna make the leap, but yeah, the board is saying yes. And I think that was, I want to be clear, that was my intent back in November of trying to get everyone together. And the irony now is that what's being stated is we all just want to get along. And that was the intent of that meeting, was to try to figure out a way to all get along and not come to this conversation that we're in today. And the reality that was put on the table at that first meeting and continued to be discussed was that NDC will dissolve if there is not a stable funding source. And so I'm not putting it on the shoulders of Taste, but it will impact Taste if there are no events to be run and there is no longer a visitor center for the examples that have been shared tonight.
Yeah, and I think the last thing we want is the NDC to dissolve. And actually, during one of our board meetings, I spoke up and said, I believe that they should have some funding, regardless of how it gets there. We want NDC to exist. And so we will make it anything, we will make it happen. As much as I think the city council will make it happen as well. We don't want to think about the thought of not having an NDC.
I think we want to support NDC as much as we can. And I also think that what's being implied in that question is that this is the only possible funding mechanism for NDC. And I would like to think that Newberg is a better community than that and can actually support local nonprofits that are providing needed services to its community. So I think yes, we've heard from NDC and we know that they're in an unfortunate financial situation, and we know that organizations can overcome those. And to put it on Taste, to make it sound like we are the ones that would cause NDC to fail, I think is a very big and unfortunate statement to make.
I think what I'm trying to demonstrate is when Megan shared her public comment and gave the examples around the state of other communities that utilize TLT funding. My concern is that the implication that was given from the previous public comment was that it was actually not legal to utilize the funds for that. So I'm trying to say that TLT actually, in fact, can be utilized for the city council goals of beautification, which are two of our top priorities.
And I think that comment also, I think, unfortunately was misunderstood. I think the big comment from us was making sure that the TLT is being used in a legal fashion for what it's intended to, because we don't want to get into a situation where the city is approached by someone that says you're not using the funds properly, and it becomes this maybe even a legal issue at the same time. So our statement was not that anything was being done illegally. We just want to make sure that everything is being done under the.
We want to advocate for responsible stewardship, and it's up to council to make this decision, and we are going to move forward. We're excited to hear what council's decision is, and we're excited to work with these organizations going forward.
I think the other thing too is like I said, there's been a lot of animosity that's happening. We all have egos. We all have bad blood, but I think after what the decision is made through the council, that's what we will live with it, and we will not stray from our belief that what everyone is doing is valid and really helping Newberg become the destination that it is and can continue to become.
So is the website kind of your predominant marketing strategy?
No.
No, so it's just a piece.
It's just one of the places that marketing is. If you'd like, we actually are just rolling out a new marketing. The board just saw it recently. A little backstory, because you're new. Sure.
Sorry.
A little backstory, just so you, when Taste started, or actually Visit Newberg started, prior to my arrival, they did a whole branding campaign. They came up with the Taste Newberg campaign, and then that, pesky little thing called COVID hit. So they were never actually able to complete the complete version of what was Taste Newberg. So they put the website together, they put some things together and so forth. And then, like most DMOs and things, we all kind of just held together and prayed that at some point we would be able to go eat at a restaurant and talk to our friends and wine taste and all of that. So that has taken some time. I came again in 2022, and one of the hopes that the board is that we would go back and talk about that branding, and then we would actually make sure that all of our campaigns were a part of that. So we've been on like a 2-year journey to spend reserve, to update the website, to make sure that our marketing match that, to get data. We never had data. We have Datify, to make sure that so we've been putting these little things together. So it's ever changing. The truth is, we do a lot of different things. We have Google, we have Meta, we have what's called Datify, which targets you. When you go on a app and you have an ad that comes to you, that's not random. you've been targeted.
Yeah.
So all of that happens for us too. So we do a little bit of all of that. We also do a lot of things where I can be a crazy woman and I am in a lot of different organizations or communities making sure that Newberg is being talked about. So there's lots of different ways that we do stuff, if that's helpful. But website just launched a week and a half ago, and every time they've tweaked something, something else broke. The newsletter thing broke this morning and I was about ready to cry because I had to go to a meeting, but they're working on it. So give us some time. Somebody understands some website faux pas. It takes a little bit. Some things are still working, but we're still working on updating it all.
So, because I noticed that you all have the Chamber of Commerce listed as like a contact center on your website. So I was
Right,
curious,
because right
like,
now they are the visitor center and they get $45,000 a year. So that's why we want to make sure that people know about them.
will you
Absolutely.
will you all absorb that role if the chamber doesn't have the visitor center?
That would be a decision of both the city and the board of directors of Taste to decide if they would want to continue to do a visitor center. Or if they would want to go into a different direction. There's lots of different ways that we can do it. I ran a visitor center for 15 years in my previous world. So I do think there can be valuable. We don't really get information from the visitor center as it stands right now. But anything can change. Anything can be, it really depends upon what the board and you guys decide. We're run by a board of directors. I just happen to work there.
I know I emailed this, and so I guess it feels important to call out.
Sure.
Pre-website update, the pre-update, any of the changes you all made. It was concerning to me that the website was advertising a restaurant in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I don't think that's super helpful for our local website. That we have businesses listed that have been closed for 2 and 3 years. The local Riverwood Golf Course is still on the website. It closed 20 years ago, according to a Dundee City Council person that I asked. Like that, if we're say like this is a significant, like, and I understand you told me that it comes from whatever database that automatically down, like, I understand that, but I also feel like there's like a fiscal responsibility to be intentionally monitoring how we're locally advertising, and to say, come to Newberg to go to the Riverwood Golf Course feels concerning.
Our listings come through a software called Otis. It's Travel Oregon's information system. It's a beast and it is constantly being changed. And it is. So there are things that come through that are wrong. There are listings that are taken off the website that then show back up. There are lots of things. It also depends upon how we do the filtering. So I agree with you. It's tricky because if I completely filter everything out and only do Newberg, there will not be a winery on my website.
Yes. And also like the content blurbs that say like, please come to Newberg and eat a honey pie and visit Euphoria.
Those are blogs and those are being cleaned up right now. We just have 3 new ones that just came out or are on the front page that Lila wrote.
The amount of money and saying this is what we're using to advertise feels concerning. I guess we're just like a good stewardship of funding piece. When I clicked onto the website right after our last city council meeting, literally that blurb about honey pie was the first thing I saw, and then I clicked on it and it took me to looks like a great restaurant if I'm ever in Milwaukee. So I think those are also pieces that are concerning to me around just stewardship, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's valid to be concerned and recognize that's part of a statewide system that needs some help, that we can help.
No, but
sitting
that was
on
a
the
blog
boards.
link. That was a blog link.
Yes, I understand that. And there are pieces to clean up. Lee works very hard on that. Our staff works very hard at that. Our board keeps an eye on our website and tries to send information over. If you've ever managed a database of this size, it's a beast, as Lee said. I had something else to say. It's totally left my mind. So I guess we'll move on.
No, I mean, I actually appreciate when somebody has the opportunity to look and actually let me know when there's been times when I don't have the opportunity. I appreciate it actually, because then it gives me, oh, okay, we need to fix that. So then myself or Katie will try to make sure that we go in there or send it to a developer. So I actually appreciate that. I don't have a problem with it at all. I would rather you tell me, because I wish I could spend all my time sitting at a desk just looking at our website. I don't have that ability.
The other question I had, I was curious about what you all do to proactively outreach to local businesses. Because I will be honest, I did some shopping this weekend. I talked with some local business owners. I cold called. And I would love to hear from your perspective, that maybe it's different from perspectives.
Oh, I mean,
It wasn't a question, it was speak on that.
Sorry. Sorry, I
No,
thought you
you're
said
good.
you were gonna speak. We do the best we can. Not every, business owner knows me. And that's where part of working together with other organizations is important. So I think that that is important. Tourism is a funnel, so I sit at one part, and then I also have to work with regional and other people and travel organs, so there's a lot of different entities. I'm not always at every event. I don't know every single business owner, but I do reach out to them all the time. We do newsletters. We were just over at the Cultural Center putting together all the information for the next Lavender Fest. We work with people on truffle festivals. We worked with the Chamber the year before. We worked with the NDC on the Truffle Festival. We work the best we possibly can. Our website is free, so if any business that reaches out to us, we are happy to get them in there and on there. I'm only up until 10 months ago, I was the only staff. So I agree. I wish I had that many hours in my day where I could do all of those things and talk to all of those businesses at the same time. That would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, council, now we come down to settling this money matter. This whole thing started November, you said. That sounds about right. And I predicted that we weren't going to come together in a kumbaya moment and figure out how to divide this money. I've seen families torn up by inheriting a little bit of money. And unfortunately, that's seems to be the nature of humans. I am so happy to hear all of you come and commit to continuing to work together, because money's not that important. Working together, being a community is very important. I guess I'll start. Downtown Coalition has wonderful things that they want to do. I just made a few notes here. Bluegrass Festival, Newgrass, beautification. You talked about the downtown passports. We talked about women-owned businesses, public art trail, and the Makers District. All of those things are designed primarily for our citizens to enjoy and to come together and be a community. I may be naive, but I really would like to see the citizens of Newberg take ownership of all these things and work together with the Downtown Coalition to solve these problems. And I do classify the cleanliness of First Street a problem. And I am so happy to have you guys understand. We're all on the same page. I do believe that the citizens of this city are good and want to help. And I believe that we can get the citizens to actually provide labor to do these things if we work it right. And that'll depend on the Downtown Coalition to do that. I would also, as a counselor, our budget is tight. Every time we talk about money here, the city manager sits up in his chair and he's thinking, where are they gonna take it from? This is no different than this situation here. I believe that there are a lot of businesses, churches, not so much businesses, nonprofit organizations that do not pay property taxes to the city of Newberg. And I have committed, will commit, and promise that I will help the Downtown Coalition raise enough money to do the objectives that they want through this. And city manager has agreed to participate in that. We're going to be looking for matching funds. So I would like to think that that's a solution to that problem. Now, as far as the chamber, I think that, in my opinion, we should continue to fund the chamber at the rate that we have been funding the chamber, $45,000 for the time being. And at some point in the future, we might decide that the chamber doesn't need that money. We might decide tonight. I'm just one vote out of 6. Tourism is down. Tourism is down statewide. Tourism is down here in Newberg. No surprise, it's the same thing everywhere. Our biggest problem with tourism, and Robin, you heard somebody from Portland the other day at the wine industry event state flat out that he gets yelled at by a lot of people because of the condition of Portland. Nobody wants to fly into Portland. Our airport in Portland is beautiful. I would like to see Taste Newberg use every cent that they can spare and put out there, come see our airport, come see Newberg, come do this. I don't think that we increase revenue from our transient lodging tax by taking money away from Taste Newberg. I think that we need to allow Taste Newberg to have everything that they can and to try to build revenue back up for our motel. We have a new motel coming into town, and I'm sure looking forward to it because it's going to be the kind of motel that the common working person can afford to stay in. That's only going to make Newberg more attractive to an entirely new class of people. I guess I want council to know that my vote is going to be that we continue to fund Taste Newberg as much as we possibly can for the time being. And I personally would like to continue to support the, I'm just repeating myself. So thank you. That's going to be my vote. What say you?
Well, so I think that there's incredible value in all 3 of these organizations. I think that there's incredible value in all 3 of these organizations and the work that they do. And, I think Taste from a tourism standpoint clearly has a leading capacity in that role, but I think that we can't undervalue that if we don't have a gorgeous downtown, we're not going to have people who are coming from a tourism standpoint. And the same with the chamber. I am not a boomer, and I love like a real human who will tell me where to go because I get overwhelmed by all the 4.5-star reviews and I just want to be told where's good. So I think that there is really good value in having that visitor center and having a warm contact in the work that can be done. I think one other piece, and you tell me where this is appropriate, that I am concerned about that I think is important for us to discuss as a council is the request for a 6-year contract. That feels like a lifetime to me. And I think when I think about my role, like Oregon state statute says we have to give this money for tourism. And so I am all about following the law and we should give the money for tourism. I think one of the pieces though that stands out to me as a concern with how this contract is written is that very simplified. It says, take the money, spend it on tourism, hire good people. And I feel extremely uncomfortable. I loved our SRO contract when I read it. It outlined all of the key performance indicators of these are the expectations for what that SRO is going to be doing, what their activities are, what's our role as a city, what's their role as a school. Like, it was so clear. And it had all of those really good key performance indicators in it. we don't have anything in here that really outlines what are our expectations as a city around the utilization of our funding, the return on investment that we might expect. I think that there's value in this is a funding source that should generate our local economy. And so why do we not have expectations that our organizations are subcontracting with other local organizations? And if they can't subcontract with a local organization, they should explain why, because that's actually going to help create jobs, create businesses, and generate our local economy. That if the website is hosted by someone local who can do really amazing website builds that you can then update it on the fly and regularly, we're not only going to be doing tourism related economic growth, but we're going to be stimulating our own local economy. So I think this entire contract, no offense if you wrote it, James, I'm really sorry. This entire contract needs to be revisited from a really clear KPI standpoint of what do we want and expect with our taxpayer funding?
I agree with a lot of what both of you have said, actually. Um, I, again, want to just be very clear that my questioning of taste for the last couple of months of if we can come together to the table was to try to create a more stable table. And while every organization came to the table to say that they want to work together, I do struggle with when push comes to shove, working together also means support each other financially. And that is what I have seen work in business practice. That is what I've seen work for nonprofits. And I have a concern with NDC specifically doing the grunt work of what tourists can do when they get here, and us expecting some of the most volunteer-centered people to always be the one to do that work for free. And I hear you saying that, you hope to create a coalition and all of the things, but my experience has been, whether it's homelessness, whether it's addiction services, whether it's events downtown, when you have something like this that happens, people all come together and say, you know what? Yes, we're gonna rally together. We're gonna do the things. And in about 3 months, it's the same 6 people still standing. And that is what has happened to NDC year over year. You have the Lonnies and the Terrys, and I love Kate and Brandon, but they're new to the game. You got the people in the room and like Dennis. I mean, Dennis has touched everything good in Newberg. And I just feel strongly, and Mary Martin Miller, I mean, the same people really have built Newberg. And I feel really strongly that when we have a revenue source that is intended for what we're talking about today, why would we not take the opportunity to set the vision for 10 years from now? And I think we will kick ourselves 10 years from now if we don't invest in downtown. And so I am comfortable not taking TLT dollars if today as a city we committed a certain number per year from somewhere else in our budget. And I believe that your budget reflects your values. And I think we've all declared through our city council priorities that downtown beautification is a value. So I absolutely do not support defunding the $45,000 from the visitor center. I think that's a conversation for a later date when their lease comes for renewal. And to be clear on the record, I have been asking the question about the visitor center since 2018, and I think it warrants a conversation. But I know that Scott and Merrill have put a ton of time and investment into that visitor center to grow it into something that, people are talking about in a very different light than it was 5 years ago. So again, my questioning is really from a place of trying to utilize our tax dollars the most effectively and as a good steward as we can. So I can go either way on this in terms of where the money comes from, but I will be very uncomfortable if we continue to ask of NDC what we hope for the future of downtown and we do not fund it. It feels disrespectful. So that's my opinion.
I'm actually thinking a little differently than I thought I would be by now. I am not the least bit interested in using any funds from the city that we need. It's like you've got to get your car repaired, and going out to dinner would be nice, but we're not going to do that because we need to get the car repaired. In this case, it's the roads repaired and many other capital improvement projects. So I'm not willing to vote for anything that would dip into our budget for this. However, I started kind of playing around and I wondered, like, so let's say 65% or 35% goes to taste, just to round it off. What if this year, 31% went to taste, 2% went to the chamber,
Peggy, we
two-
can't change the ratios. That's legally, that's done by law. We cannot change it. We can
Wait,
give, we
we're
can,
giving away the same amount. We're just spreading it out between the three entities. 1%, 1%, and 33%. And maybe even maybe in a future year, it could go up a 0.5% or 1% a year. Once we're 2 years away from the Fairfield giving us any TLT, because of the way we got them to build here, I guess. But once they're providing TLT, then that number will increase. And of course, if our occupancy rates across the other hotels improve, then I don't think it'll hurt taste. It'll hurt a little bit this year, but not as much. If we're just taking away 2%, I guess we're taking away 4%. We could go 1.5 too. I don't care. That's my idea.
I would like to stick with the original contract only because I don't, I think we need to have a deeper conversation if we're going to be pulling any money from the city, because I do know that things are tight. And although we're doing well compared to other cities, and that I think speaks volumes to all of our heads of staff and their departments and how they handle their money and how our city manager has kept an eye on things. So I do like Peggy's idea. I mean, it still irritates me a little bit but I think I want to be clear. I feel like all three organizations do have value. And so I think if we can, I would like to maybe try and do what you're talking about, Peggy. It's the same ratio. It's the same percentage, but we're divvying it up better. That would be what I'd like to try and propose. I would probably go along with something like that, but I don't want to go 6 years. I think we should go a smaller amount, maybe 3. Okay, all right. So that's all I have to say.
I'm thinking, I agree a lot with what Peggy had to say. As city councilors, we were voted in to manage the taxpayers' dollars, to do roads, infrastructure, water, those sort of things. TASTE does get our TLT because it is mandated by an ORS. I think the chamber does great work, and I think the NDC does great work. I don't think it's appropriate to put the finances of those two nonprofit organizations on the city council. That's a lot to put on us. And I feel it's inappropriate. Today, I would approve the contract as stated. I know Bill plans on doing something for the Downtown Coalition, but, that's how I feel today. I would be willing to approve the contract as stated. It's getting late. I'm losing. I'm getting tired. I think we need to decide on this or table it for another time, but I think we've gone over this many, many, many times, and I'm frankly tired.
Okay. Peggy, I interrupted you, so could you talk about the way that you wanted to divide the money up again, please?
I mean, I could be talked into different percentages, but that 35% that goes to tourism, that right now Taste is getting, perhaps they could get 31%, and Downtown Coalition and the Chamber could each get 2%. And I didn't say this earlier, but for them as well as for Taste, have some specific returns, have some data that shows how the money was used and what it's doing. I believe Taste will drive tourists here, but the Chamber and Downtown Coalition, if we've got nice street and so on, will have them returning and telling their friends. So it all just works together. Anyway, that's what I thought. And I didn't say this earlier, but I kind of missed the fact that it was a 6-year contract going to Taste. Okay, all right, thank you.
Can I?
Yeah.
Do you want me to make a motion?
No,
Okay.
let's go through. The city manager and I talked about this a couple weeks ago, actually, and we decided to try to solve those questions. So the first thing we want to talk about is the length of the contract. So what length of the contract would council like to propose? 3 years? Okay. Personally, I would, well, okay, 3 years. Well, I don't want the contract to end and all of a sudden the people that are employed by Taste Newberg are out of work. So I guess I'm thinking something like a 2-year with an extension. Every 2 years, we extend it for an additional 2 years. Or actually a 3-year contract, but whenever there's 1 year left in it, then we renew it or not. And that way they have a year to make plans. So, okay. Robin, go ahead.
What is it currently? I know they've had a 6-year contract before.
2 years now, right? Well,
Okay, well, they had a 6-year one before previously.
Right.
So now it's 2.
okay.
They told me that they had a 6-year contract.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of irrelevant. It's too late to get in the weeds, guys. All right, so we're okay with a 3-year contract. And well, I don't know how to phrase that, but you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, so the possible what I did is at the end of the last session, I wrote down every permutation every human being said as a list of all the possible options. And so I originally thought that these were the possible options on numbers of years. I moved that the Taste contract should only be for 4 years, for 5 years, or for 3 years. This is slightly different. So we're talking about a 3-year contract with the possibility of a 1-year extension. Is that correct? Is that the consensus?
3-year contract, but at the end of 2 years, then they would extend it for an additional 3.
Okay, so that would be 2 years with a possible 1-year extension.
Help me word this, James. The whole idea is they're gonna get a 3-year contract, but at the end of year 2, we will either extend it or not.
Trying to give them a year notice.
Yeah.
So it's,
So that way, if we don't renew the contract, they have another year before they have to lose their job.
I guess just,
So the next thing we want to talk about is the, division of the money. Well, let's get these in one at a time, and then we can. All right, you want to actually make a motion?
Okay, I would like to move that we modify the term length of the contract from 6 years to 3 years to be renewed at year 2 for an additional 3 years. Okay. What? With the option to, let me, sorry, try again. Okay, I move that we modify the term limits, or, oh my God. Term limits that
Second.
Elise will resign. I move that we change the contract term from 6 years to 3 years with a renewal at with an option for a renewal at year 2.
second.
All right, been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, same sign. All right. Next item, how do we divide the money?
Motion. Yeah. I'll make I'm gonna make a motion and then we
Sure.
can negotiate. Okay, I move that we, that we give 31% to Taste Newberg, and I would modify it to 3% to NDC and 1% to the chamber, keeping intact the funding for the visitor center as stated in the contract.
Okay,
Can I ask a question? Well,
you got, how much
sorry, do I need to cut, in order for you guys to make a proper motion, do I need to get the actual TLT split?
no.
No?
How much is 2.5% of, or 2% of their, what number,
No.
2% of what number are we talking about here, Will?
If we're talking about 2%, then that is an aggregate of 4% off of the 35.0667 of transient lodging that is for tourism promotion.
How many dollars? 2%. What number are we talking about? 2%.
One, what would we be looking at? What would 2% be of total TLT revenue? I know, I'm sorry, it's late. Certainly. Yeah, after the first 2 quarters, there was about 800,000-ish. I think. Well, with the moment.
This is where we got into trouble
TLT.
before.
We're talking total TLT right now. We're not talking about 2% of your percentage. Yep. Yep. Yes. Yes, if you look at the total of all the revenue, what would 2% be as a wild guess, given that we're where we're at? Yes, that would be much more secure. The whole cake.
Okay, ready? I'm just gonna read out a number. 145, 1446. What? Sorry, 145, 1446, just for you to write it down. Yes, so 1,451,446. Yeah, $29,028. Would be 3% is 43,543.
Cannot be counted on for certain because it's a variable amount.
No, we were working at a motion, but we didn't even know what 2% was. So let's start over. And, huh?
I'm gonna take my motion down.
Okay, state it. No, just tell us what you said.
Okay, I move that we allocate 31% to Taste Newberg, 3% to Newberg Downtown Coalition, and 1% to the Chamber of Commerce, keeping the $45,000 intact for the visitor center.
Okay, 3% to the chamber. 1% for the downtown coalition? Oh, you had it the other way.
It's the opposite.
No, we're talking either a percent or a number. We're not going both.
Okay, you wanted me to take that.
Okay. What do you have the motion as?
The motion currently is to move to give 31% to Taste Newberg, 3% to the Newberg Downtown Coalition, 1% to the Chamber to keep, and plus 45,000 to keep the visitor center intact.
A 1% plus 45,000.
So it's 1% plus the 45,000.
Okay.
Okay,
All right. Do we have a second?
what do you mean 3%? Wait.
No.
Doesn't work mathematically. Let's get it back to what it is. It's got to be percentages.
All right. Is there a second for her motion?
But
Hold on. Do we have a second for her motion? Okay, go ahead.
so the 2% and the 2% would be a decrease to the current contract of the chamber. So I just want to be clear about that if we're voting for that. So I would, if that's the case, I would want to go to 3% to the chamber and 1% to Downtown Coalition, because the 3% would be the 43,000, which is closer to what they have, with 1% to Downtown Coalition, and Bill's commit that he's gonna go and knock doors to get money for
Well, if you're
downtown.
gonna get money, I won't have to do it. All right.
But I also, where did you get the 4%? That was the question I had, because I would prefer that it was 2% to Downtown Coalition, 3% to the chamber, 30% to Taste.
Oh, I just threw those out to start. If 3%'s about 43.5, that would take care of the chamber. And I think even in the presentation materials said, give us a percent, it'll be lower for now. And then let's say we did 2% for the Downtown Coalition.
I'm
which is
comfortable with that.
29,000, and
Yep.
that leaves 30 for Taste. I so move.
Okay, what's your motion?
Can you make the motion?
Thank you for not mixing me an integer with a percentage.
I move that we allocate this TLT 30% to Taste, 3% to the chamber, and 2% to the Newberg Downtown Coalition.
Second.
So that's 35%. Hmm? Well, I mean, that's smaller than the actual number.
Yes, the one assumes that the remainder would go to taste. So
Why
that
would
would
we
be
assume that?
30.0667%.
So,
And 2 and 3.
all right. So Peggy, you made a motion? And, okay, but your motion was 30%, 2 and 2.
33 and 2.
33 and 2, which is only 35%, so.
Oh, okay, I'll say with her.
I'll amend my
you.
motion to have that fraction of a percentage go to taste. That 0.0, okay. So 2% to NDC, chamber 3%, and the remaining 30% plus to taste.
Yeah, you're the second.
And I'll second that again.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion on the table to give 3% to the downtown coalition, right? 2% to the chamber. All right. Sure.
All right, I'll read it off for you, Mr. Mayor, because it's getting late. With the motion on the table is 3% to the Chamber of Commerce, 2% to the Newberg Downtown Coalition, and the remainder of the portion of the TLT tax that has to go to tourism will go to the Taste Newberg.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Go ahead, Robin.
Since we're allocating money to the Downtown Coalition and the Chamber, I would ask that, they have to follow the same guidelines or similar guidelines that Taste has to follow. We need ROI, they need to go through the same rubric and metric that Taste has to go through.
Fully agree.
It's only fair.
I have some comments. First, I would like to say, James, the things that the downtown coalition do you think they will pass muster, considering that the city of Albany is currently being sued for doing those kind of things that don't have to do with bringing tourism from at least 50 miles away to their city? Are you comfortable that we are not going to get sued by the ORLA and have to defend ourselves if we give money to Taste out of this? Or, I mean, to downtown coalition?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Well, we can't stop anyone from suing the city, of course, so I can't guarantee that a lawsuit won't be filed. I will say that the analysis is driven by the what exactly the coalition is doing. There are certainly activities, based on my understanding of what the coalition does, that fit within the permissible uses of under the state statute with respect to tourism promotion or tourism or funding tourism related facilities. But I come short of saying that everything that the downtown coalition does or is proposed satisfies that. I think it really depends on exactly what they'd be applying the funds towards.
Can I? But specifically, what was called out in their presentation materials of the beautification efforts of real property, that is clearly stated in the state statute as being an acceptable use of TLT.
Yeah, the beautification of real property is something that fits if we're talking about, but the important component here is that it's got to be real property that is substantially supporting or related to tourism and tourist related activities, right? So that's why it's so important that the specific facts and the what. So the argument of if that real property is a hotel, for example, that's a very strong position that can be taken as far as fitting within the statute.
So I know Taste specifically has listed where most people are coming from, and it does say in the ORS it has to be 50 miles away. That's one of my concerns, that they will have to list where their tourists are coming from, and when it says, local, that's a concern. That's a concern for me. Is it for you?
Well, certainly part of the analysis is who is a tourist. And, and you are correct, Counselor Wheatley, that a tourist is identified in the statute as an individual that's coming from 50 miles away. I think that some of the hair splitting we get into is when we're talking about, that's part of the analysis, is identifying what is supporting tourist-related facilities or activities. And that is oftentimes proven by the individuals that are coming. So someone coming from 50 miles away, but it doesn't have to be exclusively used by someone that's coming from 50 miles away. There are facilities that can be used by a mixture or combination of individuals that would still satisfy the statute.
Then do we set similar contracts for all of these different entities? 3-year contracts with the one, or
So first of all, I've been frantically scribbling and I've written the resolution language that encapsulates everything that you've said so far. Second thing is adding any of these key indicators or other deliverables that you would like to see in the contract. I know it's late, but if you would be able to enunciate what those other factors might be, then you said there was an interest in having everybody march to the same standard. So I can add another sentence to this and it can become a unifying motion, which means that we can then just go ahead and write the contract and pursue our signatures, if you would like to do that.
Do you want us just to state ideas? I wrote a list.
I also, can I? Yeah, I do want to just like that NDC did provide the definitions of the statute, and also tourist is defined not only as a person traveling from 50 miles, it also says or includes an overnight stay, not and. So that's an important point of clarification.
All right. I'm really surprised at the way this is going. I meant it when I said that I don't think we should be taking money away from Taste Newberg because they drive this whole thing. So if we want to give an additional 2% away, then I believe that should come from the city's portion.
We can't do that with.
Yes, we sure can. That's general fund dollars. He can do whatever he wants with it.
Oh, Mayor, are you referring to the portion that's referred to as city and county services in the statute? So when we're talking about increases or new transient lodging taxes, there's a 70-30 split. The 70% portion, and I'm not talking about the grandfathered in portion of the TLT, just the increases, the 1.5% increases. There's a 70-30 split. 70% can be used for those tourism activities. 30% can be used for what's called city or county services under the statute. That is a much more flexible source of revenue as far as what the city can do. So I guess my question, Mr. Mayor, is referring to that portion of the TLT revenues, that 30%? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm talking about the city's general fund dollars. I don't care where
Okay.
what pocket you say it comes from. But if we're gonna give away more money, I've been sitting here this whole time making an argument that Taste Newberg needs to be preserved. So if we want to give 2%, then I think that we should take it out of our funds, not theirs. We get the lion's share of the TLT tax. We get 65%. So if you want to give away 2%, let's give away our money.
So how, how certain are you that you could get some funds from the nonprofits? And I mean, if you really thought that that was something you could do, then I'd maybe rescind and go right back and just modify just accept the contract that's here and go for the 3 year and move on. And we sit down and we look at it. If you can't do that, cause I believe that the downtown businesses, I mean, they need to have something. Otherwise, they're probably just, the organization is gonna fall apart. And although I don't know if that's necessarily our responsibility or not, but we're part of this town. And, you know, this is a town that I love and appreciate. So, yeah, I don't know.
Think this is a point of order. We have a motion approved, or
You're correct.
made and
Mike
seconded.
interrupted me. I move that, yeah, and this is an amendment. I move to amend the motion to state that the 2% will come out of the city's 65%. Or the city will be reduced by 2% and paid. Okay, amendment dies. You guys really want to give away 5%? All right,
None of us want to give away
okay,
everything.
all right. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Aye. All right, the other item we have, the chamber received an amount. I'm sorry, chamber gets no fund to reduce funds. Oh, it's not, doesn't need to be there. I think we're done. Well,
Yeah, were we gonna suggest KPIs for the contract? Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Suggesting KPIs to include in the final contract?
you talked to the city manager about that. He's gonna write
Want me
the
to
contract.
email them?
Honourable Mayor, I think if we desire, here is what we currently have on the floor. We have moved that the contract be awarded for destination marketing services to Visit Newberg, doing business as Taste Newberg, as amended to set the performance period to 3 years, with more language to come from James soon, with a 3% set aside to support Chehalem Chamber of Commerce and 2% set aside to support NDC, with Taste receiving 30.0667% as a special procurement. So that's where we're at right now. So is it possible to have a motion that key performance indicators will be forwarded to staff for inclusion in the final contract? Yeah.
Go ahead.
I so move.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Will, you want to state that again, please?
Okay, the whole thing? I can do it. Okay. So the whole thing was, yeah, with the KPIs. Okay. And I think for the record, I've stated clearly everything that we are doing based upon these motions. James, do you concur?
Yes, I concur.
I'm sorry, we're all exhausted. There actually hasn't been a vote on that, the KPI motion.
No, we haven't. I asked Will to read it again. So Will, one time, would you read the motion again, please?
Yes, it would be, I move that staff I move that the councillors liaise with staff to add key performance indicators to the contract as amended.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? Aye. Motion passes.
Yeah. Wait, you voted against that?
Yeah.
Why?
Doesn't
No one
matter.
gave yes.
Doesn't matter. All right, meeting's adjourned.